Chapter 1. Tianling Dynasty. The royal family's ancestral hall. Inside the solemn and serene hall, a thick smell of blood permeated the air. A silver cage stood in the middle of the hall, and a woman was trapped inside. She lay on the floor, curled up into a ball, and trembled slightly. Her gorgeous palace gown was stained with blood, and the hem of her dress was strangely empty. Her legs had been chopped off. A series of footsteps sounded, and Shanghai Yu looked up with difficulty. A familiar face came into view. Her heart trembled harshly because the person who came was her fiancé, Jiang Yucheng, whom she was about to get married in the next few days. Shanghai Yu, how does it feel to lose your force and become a cripple? Shanghai Yu looked at him in disbelief. It's you. Jiang Yucheng smiled slightly. I've added some powder to your snow tea every day for the past 3 years. How does it taste? Shanghai Yu was stunned for a moment before she smiled sadly. I thought that he was being nice, but I didn't know that he wanted my life from the start. Her expression gradually turned cold. Jiang Yucheng, do you know what kind of crime it is to murder a princess? Jiang Yucheng smiled and didn't say anything. Another female voice sounded in the hall. Sister, do you still think that you're the high and mighty princess at a time like this? Shanghai Yu suddenly turned around and saw a woman walking over gracefully. It was the third sister that she doted on the most, Shengguan. Her face, which always looked weak and timid in the past, was now full of pride and arrogance. After 1 day and 1 night, your blood is about to run dry. Who will be able to save you? Is it the seriously ill father or the 13 Yu guards at the borders? Shanghai Yu's heart sank. Father's illness was caused by you? The 13 Yu guards were probably sent away by them on purpose. Shanghai Yu blinked, patted her chest lightly, and looked at Jiang Yucheng coquettishly. Yucheng, sister is so fierce. I'm so scared. Jiang Yucheng smiled and pinched her waist. What are you afraid of? She's just a cripple now. As long as you use her blood to nourish your Yuan meridian, your talent will definitely increase greatly in the future. When that happens, won't everything be yours? Shengguan looked at her with jealousy. Elder sister, you were born with the Tianjing Yuan meridian. As the heavenly fate princess, everything is yours. But, why? Is it because your mother is the empress and my mother is just a concubine? She was unwilling. Therefore, she wanted to snatch everything from Shengguan Yu. Don't worry, in the future, the man you love the most, your future throne, will help you keep it safe. Shengguan Yu felt as though something was stuck in his chest, and he felt as though he was about to explode. The 2 people she trusted the most had betrayed her. Shengguan admired her painful expression, but it seemed that it wasn't enough as she gently said, "Oh, right. On account of how you've taken care of me all these years, I'll definitely send you on your way. I hope that you can reunite with your short-lived mother and brother soon." Every word was like a clap of thunder that exploded in Shengguan Yu's ears. Could it be that my mother and brother didn't die in the ice lake by accident back then? You don't know, but 7th brother was still calling for his sister when he died, Shengguan. Shengguan Yu yelled harshly. They laid their hands on her father, betrayed her, chopped off her legs, and trapped her here. This was already a deep grudge. However, she didn't expect that her mother and brother, whom she respected the most, would die in their hands. She stared at the 2 of them with her blood-red eyes as if she were a malicious spirit from hell. The next moment, a crazy red fire swept across. Shengguan Yu actually triggered the Tianjing Yuan meridian in her body. Burn! A fireball the size of a longan instantly flew out and penetrated Shengguan's dantian. Shengguan immediately felt that her Yuan meridian was burning as well. She screamed in panic, "My Yuan meridian!" Although Jiang Yucheng narrowly avoided the attack, half of his right arm was chopped off. If there's an afterlife, I'll definitely take revenge. Each and every word was like a curse. No one saw that a strange rune suddenly appeared on the bloodstains on the table and disappeared in an instant. In the year 1653 of the Tianling dynasty, the princess of Shangguanyu died due to qi deviation during her cultivation. Pain. Bone-piercing pain. Her flesh was torn apart and the blazing fire was burning. A muffled voice suddenly sounded in her ears. Hee hee, big brother, although this chick is as thin as a stick, her face is stunning. Isn't it a bit of a loss for us to kill her directly? That's right. Big brother, no matter what, she's still the eldest daughter of the Chu family. If we play with her, it'll definitely be different. TSK, what eldest daughter? A good-for-nothing who doesn't even have a yuan meridian? Everyone in the Chu family treats her as a stain on the Chu family. Big brother, since the third daughter only said to make her disappear forever, why don't we just burn her after we're done with our business? Will the Chu family send someone to find her? Fire? Fire. Shangguanyu felt a sharp pain in her head and suddenly opened her eyes. Under the glaring sunlight, a man with a wretched face was reaching out his hand towards her chest. You're courting death. Shangguanyu shouted and suddenly realized that her voice was completely different from before. Her voice was hoarse, as if she hadn't drunk water for a long time. However, it wasn't hard to tell that this was the voice of a 12-year-old girl. However, she didn't have time to think and immediately grabbed the man's wrist. She twisted it fiercely. At the same time, she kicked out. Ah, a mournful scream rang out in the forest. In a moment of carelessness, the man was kicked back, and his hand was in a strange position, his wrist was broken. Big brother. The two men behind him were shocked and hurriedly supported him. When they saw that he was injured, they were shocked and turned to look at the young girl. What happened? Chu Luiyue was a well-known good-for-nothing in the Chu family. She didn't have any fighting ability at all. Otherwise, she wouldn't have been so easily knocked out and brought to the dense fog forest. But now, she actually broke their big brother's hand. Bitch. How dare you hit me, Song Lian? I think you're the one who's looking for death. Second brother, third brother, go and catch her for me. Yes. Although they were puzzled, they didn't think too much and rushed over. The three of them were rank 2 warriors. How could a mere Chu Luiyue be a match for them? They must have seen a ghost just now. Looking at the two men who were attacking her, Shangguanyu narrowed her eyes and a dark light flashed across her eyes. Then, he also charged towards the two people. Just as the three of them were about to clash, the two men brandished their swords. However, Shangguanyu seemed to have expected this. She bent down abruptly and with a single step, she rushed to the front of one of the men. They were inches apart. Then, she easily grabbed the man's wrist and pressed down on a certain spot. A sense of helplessness suddenly came from the man's wrist. The man's sword stopped above the young girl's head. Shangguanyu's eyes were cold and she turned around. The sword turned in the opposite direction and chopped off the man's head. Warm and smelly blood splattered all over her face. But she didn't even blink. Dong! She let go of her hand expressionlessly and the decapitated man fell to the ground with a loud bang. A gust of cold wind came from behind. She didn't even turn her head and slashed with her sword. The man who wanted to sneak up on her widened his eyes. Before the sword landed, he was already cut in half. Dong! The neat cut on his waist made him shudder. Song Lian looked at the scene in front of him in shock and horror. What was going on? Chu Luiyue killed 2 stage 2 warriors in the blink of an eye. Chu Luiyue. Are you crazy? Song Lian's voice became much sharper because of fear. Shangguanyu turned around and looked at the man who wanted to kill her. She frowned slightly. She didn't know these 3 people. Moreover, they were too weak. If they wanted to kill her, they would have to send at least stage 8 warriors. But now, no. Wasn't she already dead? She was murdered by Jiang Yucheng and Shangguan Wan in the royal family's ancestral hall. Then now, she suddenly lowered her head and looked at the hand holding the sword. It was a pair of thin and weak hands. But because of years of hard work, there were many calluses on them. These weren't her hands. And that man just called her Chu Luiyue. Her eyes flickered as she quickly connected the dots between what had happened before and after. Did Third Missy send you to kill me? Song Lian wanted to seize the opportunity to kill Chu Luiyue, but he did not dare to act rashly even though he did not know what possessed Chu Luiyue to be possessed by the two people who had died tragically earlier. With a thought, his expression changed. He actually knelt down and wailed, "Brother, I'm sorry." Yes. Yes. It was all Third Missy's orders. She asked us to kidnap you while you were out shopping. She said that as long as we could make you disappear without anyone knowing, she would give us 600 taels of silver. Young miss, I beg you to spare me. I was muddle-headed for a moment. Missy. Missy? Hearing this, Shang Guanyu suddenly felt a headache, as if something was surging crazily. The intense pain caused her to stagger and take a step back. Her face was extremely pale. Song Lian looked at her and his gaze became vicious. In for a penny, in for a pound. Now was the time. Die. With a shout, he suddenly got up and charged towards Shang Guanyu. The power in his body was also suddenly stronger than before. He had already advanced to a stage 3 practitioner. However, just as he was about to reach Shang Guanyu, a knife pierced through his chest. It was the knife in Shang Guanyu's hand. Song Lian lowered his head in disbelief. How could it be? Chu Luiyue, when did she become so strong? He would never know the answer. Bang! The last one was also killed. There was silence in the forest. If it weren't for the 3 corpses on the ground, no one would have thought that such a skinny girl would have such shocking strength. Shang Guanyu held onto a tree for support. When the intense pain gradually disappeared, she realized that there was another person's memory in her mind. After sorting everything out, she slowly opened her eyes and sighed softly. It turned out that she had been reborn in the body of this girl named Chu Luiyue. Chu Luiyue was the big missy of the Chu family, one of the 4 big families in country Yaochen. Although she was called the big missy, her life was worse than that of the servants. As she was born with a damaged yuan meridian, she could not cultivate and was seen as the Chu family's disgrace. Chu Liuyue's mother died when she was very young. Her father, Chu Ning, was originally the best candidate to be the next head of the Chu family. However, he was seriously injured a few years ago, and his status in the family plummeted. As such, it was not hard to imagine how much Chu Luiyue had been bullied since she was young. The so-called third missy of the Chu family, who wanted to kill her, was her second uncle, Chu Yao's daughter, Chu Xianmin. The reason why she wanted to kill Chu Luiyue was that Chu Luiyue had a marriage agreement. She was engaged to the current crown prince of country Yaochen, Rong Jin. Chu Luiyue would be 14 in a month, and the engagement would be officially held then. Actually, it was not only Chu Xianmin who wanted to kill her. Countless people secretly wanted to kill her. Shang Guanyu stood up, and her pale lips slowly curved into a smile. If she remembered correctly, country Yaochen was one of the countries under the Tianling dynasty's jurisdiction. The heavens did not want her to die. From now on, she was Chu Luiyue. Chapter 2. After Chu Luiyue cleaned up the 3 corpses, she picked up a bag at the side. It belonged to the original Chu Luiyue. After opening it and inspecting it, Chu Luiyue raised her eyebrows. There were quite a lot of banknotes in the bundle, as well as some jewels and jewels. Although to Shang Guanyu, who was once the heavenly fate princess, these things naturally did not catch her eye, but to a destitute young girl from the Chu family, it was a windfall. Is she trying to escape? Chu Luiyue sneered. Not to mention that the original Chu Luiyue had a soft personality and would not have the guts to do so. Even if she wanted to escape, how could she bear to leave her father, Chu Ning? The most important thing was that Chu Luiyue had always been bullied by the entire Chu family. How could she have the chance to get so many banknotes and jewelry? It was obvious that someone had framed her. If Song Lian and the other 2 killed Chu Luiyue, the Chu family would have to pretend to look for her for the sake of their reputation. When everyone found Chu Liuyue's corpse and saw these items, they would definitely think that she had taken the opportunity to steal the items and run away while she was out shopping. Death was not to be regretted for stealing. Chu Xianmin wanted to kill her and then splash a basin of dirty water on her so that she would never be able to make a comeback. Since she had borrowed Chu Liuyue's body, she naturally had to help her with these things. Besides, Chu Liuyue's identity would indeed make it easier for her to do things in the future. After checking the items, Chu Liyue looked around and could faintly hear the sound of a stream. She was now covered in blood and needed to take a shower. Coincidentally, there was a change of clothes in the bag, so it was convenient. After passing through the lush forest for about 15 minutes, Chu Liyue finally saw a blue lake in front of her. What was even more surprising was that there was a layer of white mist floating above the lake. Even standing by the lakeside, one could only see the blue lake water rippling gently. However, in the distance, it was a vast expanse that could not be seen clearly. Chu Liyue stretched out his hand and passed through the white mist. He was slightly surprised. This was actually a white mist condensed from extremely dense origin power. One could imagine that if one were to cultivate here, it would be twice the effort for half the result. As the empress and the next ruler of the Tianling dynasty, she had a better understanding of the situation of the dozens of countries under the Tianling dynasty. Although such a place couldn't be compared to the place where she used to cultivate, it was already considered excellent in the small country Yaochen. Right at this moment, a low roar sounded out. She looked up and saw a snow-white lion by the lake looking at her with its ice-blue eyes. This was a high-level magical beast. However, just as Chu Liyue was thinking of how to deal with it, it suddenly swung its tail, lowered its body again, and closed its eyes. Chu Liyue was dumbfounded. This meant that it didn't intend to attack her? This kind of guardian magical beast should have a very bad temper. Without waiting for her to finish thinking, the lion opened its eyes and glanced at her again. Then, it simply stood up and walked towards her. When it was in front of her, the white lion suddenly raised its paw and grabbed Chu Liyue's bag. Then, it nudged her waist with its head. "You want me to go in?" Chu Liyue asked uncertainly. The white lion fart. It sat down and looked at Chu Liyue with its ice-blue eyes as if to say, "I won't leave if you don't go in." Chu Liyue, she smiled and felt that this white lion was very cute, so she stroked its head. The white lion closed its eyes in satisfaction. Only then did she take off her blood-stained clothes and enter the lake, allowing the warm lake water to surround her. Abundant and warm origin power surged toward her in an instant. Chu Liyue closed her eyes and began to seriously examine the condition of this body. In the Black Tortoise continent, the strong were respected. Cultivators were divided into two types. One type was martial artists who absorbed the origin power of heaven and earth and merged it into their flesh and blood. The other type was mystic masters who could spy on the origin power of heaven and earth and use runes to condense it. Although both types were considered cultivators, the conditions to become a mystic master were very strict, so there were very few of them compared to martial artists. They were also highly respected. To become a cultivator, one had to have a Yuan meridian. The Yuan meridian was the only bridge for cultivators to absorb the origin power of heaven and earth, so it was very important. The Yuan meridian was divided into 4 levels: Heaven meridian, Earth meridian, Mystic meridian, and Yellow meridian. The Heaven meridian was the highest. Even in the Tianling dynasty, there were only 2 people who had it in 1,000 years. One was the ancestor of the Tianling dynasty, and the other was her. This was also why she was the most respected heavenly princess. To her, cultivation was a simple matter. However, the Yuan meridian in this body was indeed defective. Although the origin power of heaven and earth could be absorbed, it could not be retained, nor could it be converted into Chu Liyue's own strength. Therefore, Chu Liyue was born a loser. "It seems like I have to repair this Yuan meridian first," Chu Liyue muttered to herself. If other people heard this, their jaws would definitely drop. How could the Yuan meridian be repaired? No one in the entire country Yaochen could do it. However, it was nothing to Sheng Wanyu, who was once the heavenly princess of the Tianming dynasty. Celestial physician was the most mysterious and respected existence on this continent. It was not difficult to revive the dead and regrow flesh and bones. However, it was more difficult to become a celestial physician than a mystic master. Their cultivation was also very different from that of martial artists and mystic masters. Even if this body was originally a piece of rotten wood, Chu Luiyue could still turn it into something magical. I wonder what grade this Yuan meridian will be after it is repaired. Just as she was thinking, Chu Luiyue's eyes suddenly flashed red. She frowned and looked at her hands, only to see a strange blood-colored rune slowly appearing in her palms. She had never seen this rune before and didn't know where it came from. Could it be Chu Luiyue's original rune? Just as this thought flashed through her mind, she suddenly felt an inexplicable sense of familiarity. It was as if this rune originally belonged to her. The blood-colored rune flickered, then transformed into a ray of light and quickly disappeared. Before Chu Luiyue had time to think carefully, she suddenly felt that there was an additional thing in her dantian. Her originally dark and dry dantian was now filled with a red light. In the middle, the rune that Chu Luiyue had seen earlier was quietly floating. She took a closer look and suddenly held her breath. That blood-colored rune did not exist alone. It was actually engraved on a transparent page. The page was extremely thin, as if it had been violently torn out from a book. The edges were incomplete, and it quietly floated there, moving gently. If not for the reflection of the blood-colored rune, it would have been difficult to see it clearly. Just as Chu Luiyue was curious about what it was and wanted to take a closer look, the transparent page suddenly turned into water and condensed into a small lake in her dantian. And that blood-colored rune had completely disappeared, as if it had never appeared. Chu Luiyue looked at her palms. There was no trace of the rune on them anymore. Her body had regained its calmness. After thinking for a while, she still could not understand what was going on. In the end, she simply gave up. That thing did not seem to be able to hurt her. Right now, she still had to solve the problem of the original body first. She turned around and was about to go ashore when her eyes suddenly turned cold. She quickly hid her body in the water and looked in front of her. Who is it? At the same time, she had already taken off the hairpin and held it tightly in her hand, ready to attack at any time. In the thick and misty white fog, a tall figure was faintly discernible. Then, a low and gentle man's voice was heard, with a hint of a smile. "Little girl, it's not very good to intrude into other people's place like this." Probably because of the mist above the lake, his voice was slightly dragged out, tainted with a hint of laziness. Chapter 3. There was actually a man hiding in this lake. Chu Luiyue's heart trembled. She had been here for so long, but she did not notice at all. Although she did not have the strength she had in her previous life, she still had the corresponding eyesight and sharpness. Otherwise, she would not have been able to deal with Song Lian and the other two by herself. This man's strength must be extremely strong. "This is your place?" she cautiously asked. The sound of water could be heard. Chu Luiyue could vaguely see a tall figure coming out of the water. Although it was separated by the white fog, she could still see the outline. Straight shoulders, broad back, and the arc of his body that faintly disappeared into the lake. Chu Luiyue clenched the hairpin tightly and continued to stare at it. She had just been reborn. She did not want to die so carelessly again. Suddenly, a low laugh could be heard. "Is it that beautiful?" Then, a gust of wind blew, and the white fog dispersed. The man's figure became clearer. It seemed that he wanted to be honest with her. Chu Luiyue sneered in her heart. What kind of world had she not seen? Why would she be afraid of this? The fog is covering it. Naturally, I don't know if it's beautiful or not. Why don't I give you an answer after I see it clearly? The white fog that was originally drifting seemed to have stopped for a moment. The other party probably did not expect that such a young lady could say such words. "If you really want to see it, I'm naturally happy. But I'm afraid that before you can see it clearly, your hairpin will have already pierced my chest, right?" The man did not seem to be thinking. There was a hint of laughter in his voice. Chu Luiyue did not say anything. The other party was very strong and very smart. He could see through her plan at a glance. Obviously, he was not easy to deal with. She certainly would not choose to face this kind of person head-on. She rolled her eyes and simply tied up her hair again. Calmly, she put the hairpin back into the bun. Sorry, I didn't know this was your place. I thought there was no one here just now, so I rashly barged in. If I have disturbed you, please don't mind. The man was silent for a moment. His voice seemed to be far and near. It's fine. Chu Luiyue was somewhat surprised. The other party actually let her go so easily? She was bewildered and didn't say anything. Although this jade ripple lake is beneficial to the body, your yuan meridian is blocked. It's best that you don't stay here for too long. As he spoke, the man stood up and walked to the shore. Yemi saw how he moved, and he was already dressed. Even though there was a white mist covering his figure and she could barely make out his figure, she could still tell that this man's figure was indeed top-notch. She no longer hesitated and quickly put on her clothes, intending to leave. This man was not to be trifled with. However, before she could take a step forward, the man's voice came from behind her. Little girl, although I don't intend to pursue the matter, I still need to know who broke into my place today. The tone of his voice was steady, but there was a trace of the dignity of a superior that could not be refuted. Did he want her to tell him who she was? Chu Luiyue turned around. A man was standing not far away. She held her breath slightly. As an imperial concubine, she had seen countless young talents, and her fiancé was known as the most handsome man in the Tianling dynasty, Jiang Yucheng. However, when she saw this man for the first time, she couldn't help but feel a trace of amazement in her heart. A pair of sword-like eyebrows slanted to his temples, a straight nose, and sparkling starry eyes. It was as if the most beautiful starry sky couldn't even compare to 1,000th of those deep eyes. Just a slight glance was enough to make people crazily sink into that light. His scarlet lips were slightly pursed, forming an impeccable curve. His thin lips, which originally appeared somewhat fickle, had a bit of a peach color because of the pearl in the middle of his lips. His eyes were the cleanest starry night in the world, but his lips were the most ambiguous spring color in the world. Pure and mysterious, gentle and elegant, and noble, he was like an unfathomable contradiction. Just by standing there, he seemed to attract everyone's attention and make people go crazy. Chu Luiyue sized him up and silently said a word in her heart, evildoer. Chu Luiyue. She had no intention of hiding her identity. After all, the other party looked like a very capable person. Lying would only add to the trouble. The man opposite her was also looking at her, but his gaze was like the moonlight. It only swept past her indifferently and finally stopped on her face. Since Xue Xue let you in, I'll let it go this time. Xue Xue. Was it that white lion? The man suddenly stepped forward and walked in front of Chu Luiyue. Chu Luiyue was filled with vigilance, but she still forced herself not to show hostility and looked at him quietly. Then, he stood still and suddenly reached out. His warm fingers gently brushed past her cheek. The eldest daughter of the Chu family naturally can't return in such a sorry state with bloodstains. Chu Luiyue was stunned. She looked down and saw a faint trace of blood on his finger. The two of them breathed in and out for a moment. His voice was low and stirred her eardrums. Also, I'm Rongxiu. Chu Luiyue wanted to say something, but he had already said, you should leave. Chu Luiyue pursed her lips. Although she didn't know what he was planning, thank you. There was still a tough battle when she returned to the Chu family. Only when the girl's slender figure completely disappeared into the forest did Rongxiu finally retract his gaze and look at the white lion. The gentle smile on his face gradually faded. You want to curry favor with her, so you sold your master? The white lion didn't move. If you pretend to be dead, I'll tell her next time that you actually have another name, Flower. Roar. The white lion suddenly stood up. It was clearly called Snowflake. It wasn't called Flower. If others heard it, it would be embarrassing. The capital should be quite lively recently, so I won't hold you back. Snowflake's eyes suddenly lit up. The atmosphere in the Chu family's hall was stiff and cold. Chu Ning's face was filled with anxiety. She paced uneasily and looked outside nervously. Yu has been out for a day. It's already evening. Why isn't she back yet? First elder, send someone out to look for her as soon as possible. What would they do if something happened? Yu didn't have any strength at all. Chu Ning, what are you worried about? It's not her first time out. How could anything happen to her? Maybe the child wants to play, so she's a little late. The first elder, Chu Xiao, took a sip of tea and said indifferently. Chu Ning was very anxious, but he knew that they wouldn't agree to anything. However, the sky was almost dark. Yu definitely wouldn't be so insensible to not come back so late. I'll go look for her myself. Before he could step out of the door, someone walked in first. The person was wearing a light yellow dress and had a pretty face. It was third Missy Chu Xianmin. She first bowed before speaking with a tinge of grievance in her voice. First elder, I know that my sister isn't back yet, so I shouldn't trouble everyone. But there's something that I really don't dare to hide. My things have been stolen. First elder frowned. What's going on? Chu Xianmin's eyes were filled with tears. Today, I invited my sister to my room to give her some private money so that she could buy some things for herself when she went out shopping. However, I didn't expect that when I went to take a look just now, the money and jewelry that my parents gave me were all gone. Chu Ning shouted. What do you mean? Are you trying to say that you stole your things? Chu Xianmin cried even harder. She was like a pear blossom in the rain, full of grievance. I didn't mean that. How would I dare to accuse my sister? However, only my sister went to my room today. First elder narrowed his eyes. Could it be that she stole Xianmin's things and ran away secretly? How dare she? Chu Ning was about to refute when a voice suddenly sounded. First Missy is back. Everyone in the hall was stunned. A teardrop hung in the corner of Chu Xianmin's eyes, covering the disbelief in her eyes. How could it be? Shouldn't Chu Luyue, a slender and straight figure, came against the light? First elder, you must be joking. As the first Missy of the Chu family, I have a share of the Chu family's assets. Why would I betray the Chu family just to take my third sister's pocket money? Chu Luyue stepped into the hall with a smile, but it made Chu Xianmin shudder. Chapter 4. Chu Xianmin was so shocked that she almost jumped out of her chair when she saw the familiar face. Chu Luyue is really back. How is this possible? Song Lian and the other two were not weak. It was a piece of cake for them to deal with Chu Luyue. Everything was arranged flawlessly, but Chu Luyue actually, Chu Ning rushed over nervously when he saw his daughter return. How are you? Chu Luyue's heart warmed when she saw the worry in Chu Ning's eyes. She could feel that Chu Ning really loved his daughter. Even though she was a good-for-nothing, the love a father had for his child was not any less. It was a pity that the real Chu Luyue was already dead. Chu Luyue patted the back of Chu Ning's hand and gave him a reassuring smile. Don't worry, father. I'm fine. Chu Ning did not believe her when he heard her say that, but she did not seem to be injured from head to toe. The rock in his heart was finally lifted. He did not know why, but he felt that something was different about when he saw the smile on his daughter's face. Was always weak and timid in the past, but now, there seemed to be stars in her bright, black eyes. They were bright and dazzling. Sister. You're finally back. Minmin was so worried about you. Chu Luyue looked up and saw Chu Xianmin looking at her with a face full of joy, as if she was very happy. Worried? Chu Luyue sneered in her heart. Chu Xianmin was probably really worried when she saw that she was back. Oh. So, third sister was worried about me? But when I was outside, I seem to have heard third sister accusing me of stealing your pocket money. Chu Luyue spoke calmly. Chu Xianmin's back broke out in cold sweat. What's wrong with Chu Luyue? Not only did she not die outside, but she also seemed to have become a little different. How dare she ask such a question in front of everyone? Sister, you've misunderstood. I just felt uneasy when you didn't come back because it was getting late. That's why I asked First Elder. At this point, her eyes were filled with tears again. After all, I don't have any origin power in me. If I were to go out and get bullied, I would really blame myself to death. He was deliberately mocking her for being a good-for-nothing who couldn't cultivate. If it were the Chu Luiyue of the past, he would probably think that Chu Xianmin was worried about him. However, the Chu Luiyue of today had changed. How could he be fooled by such despicable methods? Chu Xianmin was the most talented person in the Chu Luiyue's generation. Her words only made others think that Chu Luiyue was useless. Even leaving the house was troublesome. Sure enough, the First Elder's eyes immediately became filled with disgust. You came back so late today, who knows what you did outside? If you can't even handle such a small matter, then don't go out in the future, lest you embarrass the Chu family. Trash. Chu Ning's expression suddenly turned cold. He stepped forward and shielded Chu Luiyue behind him. He clenched his fists and forced himself to restrain himself. First Elder, you, is still a child. Aren't you going overboard with your words? Although he was not the same as before, he could not let others bully his daughter like this. Looking at the tall figure in front of her, Chu Luiyue was stunned. Her eyes turned sour. In her previous life, she was born as the Heavenly Fate Princess. Her status was noble and her strength was tyrannical. She had always shouldered everything by herself. This feeling of being protected was too foreign to her, but it was also too precious. This time, no matter what, she would do her best to protect all the people who truly loved her. Father. Chu Luiyue gently pulled him and took a step forward. Chu Ning looked at her. He thought that she would be as timid as before, but he saw a pair of calm eyes. That skinny figure straightened her back and lifted her chin slightly. There was an indescribable aura around her. Don't worry, First Elder. Everything that needs to be bought is all here. It has already been sent to the warehouse. If you don't believe me, you can go and check. As for why I came back so late today, third sister should know best, right? Sister. What nonsense are you talking about? Chu Xianmin panicked when she heard this, and her tone became much colder. Could Chu Luiyue have already guessed that Song Lian and the other two were sent by me? Chu Luiyue looked at her with a half-smile and asked in surprise, Third sister, didn't you tell me? Didn't third sister give me money to buy things for you? Chu Xianmin choked. There was no such thing. However, that was exactly what she had said to First Elder and Chu Ning. She originally wanted to take the opportunity to frame Chu Luiyue, but she did not expect Chu Luiyue to go with the flow. Chu Luiyue stretched out her hand, and a pomegranate-patterned jade pendant lay quietly in her palm. Third sister, because the money you gave me was not enough, I have already left your other flower moon pomegranate jade pendant in Jinbao Pavilion as a token. You just have to send the rest of the money tomorrow. That jade pendant was Chu Xianmin's mother's dowry. It was very precious because it looked beautiful and could nourish the body. There was no other pair in the entire imperial city. Chu Xianmin liked that jade pendant very much and often wore it. Because of this, everyone could confirm that it was indeed Chu Xianmin's. When First Elder heard this, he looked at Chu Xianmin suspiciously. Minmin, is what she said true? She treasured this jade pendant very much. If she did not give it away, it would be very difficult for others to get it. It would be fine if she had bought something else, but Jinbao Pavilion was the most luxurious place in the entire imperial city. Everything inside was a top-notch treasure, and every one of them was worth a fortune. Although the Chu family was also an aristocratic family in the imperial city, it had been declining in recent years. Most of the time, it was not as glorious as it seemed. Even if he was the Chu family's first elder, he could not squander money in a place like Jinbao Pavilion. Chu Xianmin secretly gritted her teeth. She had purposely taken it out to make everyone believe that Chu Luiyue had stolen something and escaped. She did not expect, I liked an item in Jinbao Pavilion, but I've been busy with cultivation recently and have no time to go out. That's why I asked sister for help. In this situation, she had to admit it even if she did not want to. Although the items in Jinbao Pavilion were expensive, she could still afford one or two of them. It would not be too late to deal with Chu Luiyue after she investigated Song Lian and the other two's situation. Hearing her mention cultivation, the first elder's expression eased a lot and he said warmly, "What's wrong with that? You are the Chu family's most outstanding seedling. Just tell me what you want." Chu Xianmin smiled sweetly. "Thank you for your kindness, first elder." Chu Luiyue sneered in her heart. How could it be so easy to fool her? She could not completely oppose Chu Xianmin now, but it was impossible for her to silently suffer losses. Does this mean that first elder plans to pay for the rest of the money from the public account? Chu Luiyue asked curiously. Both first elder and Chu Xianmin were stunned and hesitated. The Chu family had strict rules. Everyone's monthly allowance was distributed according to their rank. If they openly took the money for Chu Xianmin, others would inevitably be unhappy. This is Minmin's matter. Minmin should be responsible for it herself. Chu Xianmin naturally could not ruin the reputation she had built up over the years. She immediately took over the matter. Although the items in Jinbao Pavilion were expensive, she was usually doted on and had saved up a lot of money. Spending a few thousand taels of silver on one or two items was not a big problem. As she spoke, she smiled and looked at Chu Luiyue with a generous, gentle, and noble look. "Sister, we can just go and collect the treasures tomorrow, right?" Chu Luiyue nodded, and a sly look flashed across her eyes. "Yes, I've already given the 1,000 taels you gave me to Jinbao Pavilion. You just need to pay the remaining 199,000 taels tomorrow." Chu Xianmin thought she had heard wrongly and screamed subconsciously. Chapter 5. That's right. Didn't you always say that you liked the carved red jade pendant in Jinbao Pavilion and asked me to buy it for you? As one of Jinbao Pavilion's treasures, it's naturally expensive. Don't tell me, you can't afford it? But Jinbao Pavilion only agreed to let me buy it with 1,000 taels in advance on account of our Chu family. Chu Luiyue looked troubled. First elder, who was at the side, almost couldn't catch his breath. 199,000 taels. Even for the Chu family, it was not easy to take out so much money at once. He looked at Chu Xianmin. No matter how much he liked Chu Xianmin, he was extremely displeased and reprimanded her coldly. "Minmin, aren't you being a little too insensible? With the Chu clan's name on the table, this item was a must-buy. Otherwise, who knew what the outside world would say of the Chu family if this were to spread?" Chu Xianmin opened her mouth and wanted to defend herself, but she could not say anything. She did not even ask Chu Luiyue to buy anything for her, let alone the carved red jade pendant in Jinbao Pavilion that was worth 200,000 taels. That item had been famous for a long time. It was a treasure made of top-grade, luxurious red jade. Although it was beneficial for cultivation, it was far from being worth 200,000 taels. That was why no one bought it for so long. She did not expect Chu Luiyue to be so cunning. He wanted her to bear the cost of 200,000 taels. Chu Xianmin was so angry that her whole body trembled. If not for first elder, she would have rushed over and ripped Chu Luiyue's mouth apart. After so many years, she had only saved 4,000 to 5,000 taels of silver. 200,000 taels was a huge hole to her. However, this concerned the Chu family's reputation. She had no choice but to take on this matter. Don't worry, first elder. I'll definitely fork out the money myself." She clenched her teeth and forced a smile. "Mother has always doted on me. She once promised me that if I could get first place in the academy's assessment, she would fulfill one of my requests." Chu Xianmin's mother, Lu Yao, came from the Lu family, which was one of the top merchant families in the imperial city. They were very wealthy and could not be underestimated. On one hand, she wanted to show that she was able to fork out this sum of money no matter what and that she wouldn't put the Chu clan in a difficult position. On the other hand, she wanted to use the Lu clan's prestige to raise her own standing. As expected, when the Lu clan was mentioned, the first elder's expression eased up a lot. Your mother really loves you the most. However, this is also because you are outstanding. I remember that the academy's assessment will begin a month later, right? Tian Lu Academy, where Chu Xianmin was from, was the top academy in the entire country Yaochen. Anyone who could get in was an enviable genius. Even the members of the royal family had to undergo a test if they wanted to enter. Chu Xianmin was doted on in the Chu family because of her identity. Yes. Chu Xianmin felt a lot more confident. Then, she seemed to have thought of something, and a hint of shyness appeared on her pretty face. Brother Jean. His Highness the Crown Prince also said that if Minmin can clinch the first place, there will be a reward. Chu Luiyue raised his eyebrows slightly. The brother Jean that she was talking about was naturally the current Crown Prince, Rong Jean, who was engaged to Chu Luiyue. Looking at her, anyone could tell that there was something between her and Rong Jean. First Elder's eyes lit up. Really? The Crown Prince was extremely talented and capable. He was deeply loved by His Majesty. The Chu family was in decline now. If they could climb up the Crown Prince's tree, things would naturally be different. Chu Xianmin seemed to have suddenly thought of something. She quickly glanced at Chu Luiyue and explained nervously, Sister, don't misunderstand. Sis, please don't misunderstand. There's really nothing going on between Brother Jean and me. He must have taken good care of me because of the engagement between you and him. If you can enter the academy, Brother Jean will definitely treat you more. Her words stopped abruptly. Everyone knew that Chu Luiyue was born a good-for-nothing. He couldn't even cultivate normally, let alone enter Tian Lu Academy. As for the engagement, if someone really cared about it, Chu Luiyue wouldn't be bullied to this extent. Chu Ning clenched his teeth, but his heart gradually turned cold. He originally thought that things would change when you, and the Crown Prince got engaged in another month. However, it now seemed like it was just his wishful thinking. He had previously heard that the Crown Prince seemed to be interested in Chu Xianmin, but he didn't expect it to be so blatant. They didn't even care about you, Poor you, She was so infatuated with the Crown Prince. Chu Xianmin secretly looked at Chu Luiyue smugly, wanting to see pain on her face. However, to her surprise, Chu Luiyue didn't seem to care about this at all. Not only was she not shocked or disappointed, but she even laughed. That's great. As long as third sister can fork out the money, it's fine. Chu Xianmin was stunned. Why did she feel that the Crown Prince wasn't as important as the 200,000 taels to Chu Luiyue? Since it's over, Father and I will go back first. After she finished speaking, Chu Luiyue really turned around and left with Chu Ning. Chu Xianmin felt as if she had punched cotton, and she suddenly felt a blockage in her chest. Chu Luiyue, who had walked to the door, suddenly stopped and turned around. Her dark and cold eyes stared straight at Chu Xianmin with an indescribable heavy pressure. Oh right, third sister, you have to be careful with what you say in the future. If I didn't come back in time today, wouldn't everyone think that I stole your things and ran away? Then, I wouldn't be able to clear my name even if I died. Don't you think so? Chu Xianmin suddenly shuddered. She knew. She must have known. Chu Xianmin wanted to refute, but she felt an invisible force above her head, making her unable to move. She gradually recovered when Chu Luiyue's figure disappeared outside the door. Her forehead was covered in cold sweat. Ruthlessness flashed across Chu Xianmin's eyes. It seemed like she had to check on Song Lian and the other two's situation first before thinking of a way to completely get rid of Chu Luiyue. Chu Luiyue and Chu Ning returned to the small, secluded courtyard they lived in together. You've been tired the whole day. Quickly rest. Chu Ning patted Chu Luiyue's head with heartache. Chu Luiyue quickly scanned her surroundings. Even though she had the memories of her previous life, she still sighed in her heart when she saw it for herself. Although it was called a small courtyard, it was actually just a few dilapidated houses. The inside of the house was almost completely bare. It was obvious what kind of life the father and daughter had lived in the past. If word got out, no one would believe that Chu Ning, who was once the next heir of the Chu family, and Chu Luiyue, the eldest daughter of the Chu family in name, would live in such a place. Chu Luiyue nodded lightly. Father, too. Chu Ning's lips moved as if he wanted to ask something, but in the end, he only sighed softly. I know you like the crown prince, but I'm afraid he's not the right person for you. Chu Xianmin is talented and has the support of her family. If you go against her like this today, I'm afraid. Chu Luiyue smiled gently. Father, don't worry. I know what I'm doing. Chu Ning's heart was filled with worry, but when he met her smiling but calm eyes, he suddenly became speechless. Seems to be a little different. He nodded and rubbed his daughter's hair before turning around. Chu Liuyue's gaze landed on his right leg, which was barely supporting himself. She quickly shifted her gaze away and pushed the door open to enter the room. The curtain of night hung up outside, and a faint ray of moonlight flowed in through the old, broken window. Chu Luiyue walked to the window and tapped her fingertips lightly with a deep gaze. She had already asked during the day. Today was July 10th, year 832 in country Yaochen. Compared to the Tianling dynasty's calendar, it was exactly 1 year after her death. In other words, she had been reborn in Chu Liuyue's body a year later. With her current status and strength, she indeed needed to plan carefully if she wanted to take revenge. Suddenly, her expression changed, and she quickly turned to look at the bed. Who is it? There was dead silence in the room. The air seemed to have frozen. A moment later, a pair of icy blue eyes appeared in the dark room. Chu Luiyue was stunned. Only then did she see clearly that it was a huge white lion nesting obediently on her bed. Chapter 6. Why are you here? Chu Luiyue relaxed and her voice became much gentler. Although this white lion looked very ferocious, she could feel that it seemed to be very close to her. It even purposely restrained its strong demonic aura. The white lion got up and jumped down from the bed. It silently jumped in front of Chu Luiyue. Its body was very tall and strong. Chu Luiyue, who was already thin and weak, looked even more petite in front of it. It was as if it could easily swallow her with its mouth. Even the entire room seemed much narrower and lower. Shue's icy blue eyes blinked. It lowered its huge head and swayed beside Chu Liuyue's hand. Chu Luiyue was stunned. For a moment, she was not sure what it wanted to do. Seeing that she did not move, Shue moved closer and looked up at her eagerly. Chu Liuyue's eyes twitched. Was it asking to be caressed? She tentatively reached out her hand and placed it on its head, gently caressing it. It felt incomparably soft and smooth fur. It felt very good to the touch. It could be seen that it had led a very good life to be able to become like this. Only then did Shue close its eyes in satisfaction. It stretched its body and swung its tail. It let out a satisfied groan. Chu Luiyue, had it made up its mind not to leave? Hey, shouldn't you go back to your master's place? What's the meaning of you staying here? However, Shue did not seem to care. It closed its eyes and did not move, as if it had really fallen asleep. Chu Luiyue did not know whether to laugh or cry. Although she did not know why the white lion was doing this, it was already late. If she insisted on letting it go back, it might cause some trouble. By then, it would be even more troublesome. After thinking for a moment, Chu Luiyue decided not to dwell on this matter. She gently patted its head and went to bed to rest alone. When she touched the blanket, she realized that it was actually warm. A light bulb went off in her head. Did this guy come here just to warm my bed? In the next moment, she could not help but laugh. I'm thinking too much. If you must stay here, you have to make it clear that you can't let anyone else know. Shue Shue opened its eyes and swung its tail happily. Chu Luiyue lay on the bed and sorted out the things she had to do the next day before gradually falling asleep. When she gradually fell asleep, the white lion, which seemed to have fallen asleep long ago, opened its eyes and looked at Chu Luiyue. Chu Luiyue Shue Shue seemed to have dreamed of something. Her brows and her forehead, and her lips were pale. A silver ray of light seeped out of Shue Shue's body and slowly entered Chu Luiyue's body. In her dreams, Chu Luiyue felt as if her body was in a warm pool of water. It was rare for her to feel relaxed and comfortable. Only then did she gradually relax her tightly knitted brows and fall asleep. While Chu Luiyue was sleeping peacefully, there was one person who couldn't fall asleep, Chu Xianmin. What? Ting Fong Garden's door was tightly shut. Chu Xianmin stared at the man kneeling in front of her and tried her best to suppress her anger. This. Third Missy, I've already checked carefully, but I didn't find any traces of Song Lian and the rest. Chu Lianqing's back was covered in cold sweat. How is that possible? Chu Xianmin interrupted him harshly. The plan was flawless. As long as Chu Luiyue went out, we could have directly knocked her out and brought her to the forest to finish her off. Previously, you said that Song Lian was already a stage 3 warrior and that dealing with a mere Chu Luiyue would not be a problem. But now? Chu Luiyue is not dead, and even Song Lian and the rest are missing. Is this how you do things for me? Third Missy, logically speaking, this should be the case. I saw them bring Chu Luiyue out of the city gate with my own eyes. But who knew that she was not dead? After knowing that Chu Luiyue had returned alive, he felt that something was amiss and immediately went to check on Song Lian and the rest. However, no matter how hard he searched inside and outside the imperial city, the three of them seemed to have evaporated into thin air. At this point, he realized that something was wrong. She must have known that I was the one who did it. Chu Xianmin said hatefully. Thinking about how she had been frightened by Chu Luiyue's gaze, she felt a wave of anger. Third Missy, so what if she knows? She's just a good-for-nothing. What can she do? Idiot. If she really didn't do anything, then why did Song Lian and the rest disappear? Chu Lianqing did not dare to say anything else. Chu Xianmin secretly gritted her teeth. She would not be at ease as long as Song Lian and the rest were not found. Who knew how Chu Luiyue came back alive and how she dealt with those people? If she used this as leverage against her, continue searching. Also, send someone to secretly monitor Chu Luiyue. If there are any abnormalities, report to me immediately. Yes. After Chu Lianqing left, Chu Xianmin's eyes gradually became gloomy. Chu Luiyue actually dared to turn against her. Then, she could not be blamed for being merciless. A good night's sleep. The next morning, when Chu Luiyue woke up, she realized that Shue Shue had already left. It was as if it was keeping watch for her at night. Chu Luiyue smiled and shook her head. This was the first night after her rebirth. She originally thought that it would be difficult to fall asleep, but she did not expect to sleep very soundly. It was probably because of this that her entire body seemed to be much lighter. After a simple wash-up, Chu Luiyue sat in front of the mirror, wanting to see her rebirth's face. A young girl's face was reflected in the old and blurry bronze mirror. Probably because she was malnourished all year round, her small face was sickly. She was almost 14 years old, but she looked like she was 12 years old. A pair of black and round eyes appeared to be exceptionally large. Even so, it was not difficult to see that this small face was actually very beautiful. She was still young and inexperienced now, but she would definitely be a rare beauty after a few more days of growth. Perhaps it was because she had changed, but the pair of dim and timid eyes had become calm and determined. They were as bright as the stars, and there was a vague sense of nobility between her brows. She was like a pearl covered in dust that started to emit a dazzling light after the dust was wiped away. Chu Luiyue stared at this face, and the expression in her eyes changed. After a long time, she finally let out a long sigh. This face was actually 40% to 50% similar to her in her previous life. After a while, she collected her thoughts, packed up, and left the house. The Chu family had strict rules, and the normal people who entered and left the house were checked very strictly. However, Chu Liuyue's status was low and she was often sent to do some servant's errands. Thus, when the guards saw her leaving the house, they did not question her too much. Unknowingly, this made it much easier for her to do things. After leaving the Chu family, she went straight to Zhenbao Pavilion. Just as she stepped into Zhenbao Pavilion, a middle-aged man immediately welcomed her with a face full of smiles. "Big Chu Missy, you're finally here. I've been waiting for you the whole day." This middle-aged man was the second in command of Zhenbao Pavilion, Yan Gu. Most people would politely address him as Second Master Yan when they saw him. Everyone knew that Zhenbao Pavilion was backed by a mysterious power and could not be offended. Thus, their attitude towards Yan Gu and Zhenbao Pavilion was very respectful. But now, he was especially enthusiastic towards Chu Luyue. Chu Luyue smiled. "It seems that Second Master Yan is very satisfied with yesterday's business deal." Yan Gu laughed. "This is all thanks to Big Chu Missy. That item had been in the market for many years. It was not that no one liked it, but because it was too expensive and not worth the price, it was shelved. Who knew that Chu Luyue would directly say that she could sell that item the moment she came yesterday?" At first, he did not believe it, but early this morning, the Chu family and the Lu family sent money over. At this moment, he looked at Chu Luyue as if he was looking at the god of fortune. "You said yesterday that there would be a good deal today. I wonder." Yan Gu rubbed his hands excitedly, his eyes shining as he looked at Chu Luyue. Chu Luyue tapped the table lightly with his fingertips. "Second Master Yan, I'm not here to buy anything today. I'm here to sell something." Yan Gu was stunned. Chu Luyue took out a piece of paper from his sleeve and handed it over. Yan Gu took it and his eyes widened in shock. Chu Luyue said leisurely. Chapter 7. Yan Gu was not surprised to hear the price. Instead, he looked at Chu Luyue in surprise and shook the thin piece of paper in his hand. "This. First young Mistress Chu, do you really intend to sell this?" Chu Luyue nodded. "I believe Second Master Yan understands this price. You won't lose out at all, right?" Yan Gu smiled bitterly. Of course, he knew that exchanging 300,000 taels of silver for this piece of paper was not a loss. It could even be considered a huge profit. But the point was, this thing was a hot potato. "First young Mistress Chu, you've really given me a hot potato." Because this piece of paper was actually a deed to a land. Moreover, it was not an ordinary deed, but a deed to a hunting ground outside the capital city. The so-called hunting ground was actually a place that specialized in rearing magical beasts. In the Black Tortoise mainland, magical beasts were divided into 9 levels. Level 1 was the weakest and level 9 was the strongest. Magical beasts were wild and free by nature. They were unwilling to be ordered around by humans. But if they formed a contract with humans, they would become very loyal and capable assistants. Generally speaking, a person could only form a contract with one magical beast at a time. But if the magical beast died, the human could continue to find other magical beasts to form a contract with. The higher the level of the magical beast, the more powerful it was and the more helpful it would be to the human. Because of this, the cultivators in the Black Tortoise mainland were always eager to find magical beasts, especially high-level ones. But how could magical beasts be so easy to find? Ordinary cultivators could only venture into dangerous places and risk their lives in search of magical beasts. But it was different for powerful families. They would usually choose to build their own hunting grounds. They only needed to find a suitable place to rear some magical beasts. This would save them a lot of trouble and allow the disciples to freely choose the magical beasts. It could also be used as a training ground to enhance the strength of the younger generation of cultivators. Why not kill several birds with one stone? Of course, it was easier said than done. In reality, building a hunting ground required a lot of manpower and resources. Because of this, apart from the imperial family, only the top aristocratic families could afford to maintain a hunting ground. Even the Chu family only had one hunting ground. In recent years, the Chu family had gradually declined, and that hunting ground was almost unsustainable. Among them, the one with the highest level was a 5th-grade magical beast raised by the Chu family's patriarch, Chu Zhonghe, 20 years ago, Golden Tiger. And now, the hunting ground's title deed that Chu Luiyue took out was not something that belonged to the Chu clan. It was her own. Speaking of which, she was a good-for-nothing who had been bullied all the time. The only reason she could have such a thing was because of her marriage agreement with the crown prince, Rong Jin. When she was just born, Chu Ning was the most outstanding genius of his generation in the Chu clan. He had the potential to take over the Chu clan. In addition, he had a resolute and loyal personality and was deeply loved by His Majesty. Therefore, when she was born, His Majesty directly set the engagement between her and the crown prince. As long as she reached the age of 14, she would be officially engaged and become the crown princess. As for the title deed of the hunting ground, it was directly bestowed to Chu Luiyue by His Majesty. At that time, Chu Luiyue was still an infant, and he had already become the envy of countless people. However, who would have known that she had an incomplete Yuan meridian and was born a good-for-nothing? Since then, she had become the laughing stock of the entire country Yaochen. In a world where the strong were respected, the existence of the weak was a kind of mistake. When Chu Ning and his daughter were in dire straits, it was not that they did not think of the hunting ground. However, in reality, the hunting ground had long been controlled by the crown prince. Chu Ning had requested to see the crown prince a few times to seek help, but he was always rejected. Of course, he knew what this meant, so he did not fantasize about it anymore. The original Chu Luiyue had always felt that she was not worthy of the crown prince, so she did not even think about it. It was a pity that the current Chu Luiyue was someone else. Her principles were very simple. If someone respected her, she would respect them tenfold. If someone bullied her once, she would return the favor 100-fold. It was impossible that the crown prince did not know what kind of life they were living, but he did not do anything. Then, what was the point of keeping the title deed? I know. That's why I came to look for Second Master Yan. Why? Can't Jinbao Pavilion afford this title deed? As Chu Luiyue spoke, she reached out to take the title deed, seemingly a little disappointed. Second Master Yan hurriedly and carefully kept the title deed in his sleeve and chuckled. Look at what you're saying. I don't dare to talk about other things, but there's no business that Jinbao Pavilion doesn't dare to do in country Yaochen. Since you dare to send money to us, we naturally dare to accept it. Chu Luiyue was calm and composed as she sneered. My name is clearly written on the title deed. Why wouldn't I dare to accept it? Everyone knew that the title deed was given to her by the emperor, but she was just a good-for-nothing now. No matter how one looked at it, she was not qualified to be the crown prince's consort. Anyone who wanted to save face would take the initiative to return the title deed. However, how could Chu Luiyue do such a stupid thing? She would do the same to others. Before she came, she had asked around. Jinbao Pavilion had a special status, and everyone in the imperial city treated them with respect. No one else dared to accept the title deed, so Jinbao Pavilion was the only choice. Indeed, it was as she had expected. Jinbao Pavilion could really take this business. Yan Ge carefully sized up the young lady in front of him again. This is really strange. It was rumored that the eldest daughter of the Chu family was born a good-for-nothing. She was weak and incompetent, and even the servants in the Chu family could bully her. However, the person in front of him was clearly different. Straightforward, resolute, generous, and composed. Although the clothes he wore were old and tattered, his entire body emitted an indescribable noble aura. His appearance was still young, but the space between his brows revealed a composure that was rarely seen in ordinary people. He had only seen this kind of aura on one person before. Haha. Great. Jinbao Pavilion will take this business. Should I give you banknotes, or? Yan Ge rubbed his hands excitedly. The hunting ground had been carefully maintained by the crown prince in recent years, and there were many fiends. It was a huge profit. Chu Luiyue shook her head. There's no hurry. I want to pick something first. Yan Gu was stunned and immediately said, What do you want? I'll get someone to get it for you immediately. Now, he would no longer treat the young lady in front of him as the lowly good-for-nothing who could be bullied by anyone. Chu Luiyue's eyes flashed. I want 10-year-old bamboo leaves, ice stones, and wormwood, 30-year-old eupatorium seeds, red mulberry leaves. As she spoke, she took out another piece of paper. Just prepare them according to the list and give them to me. Yan Gu took a closer look and was a little confused. He had thought that Chu Luiyue would pick something precious, but he did not expect her to want these herbs. Some of them were more common, but the more he looked, the more precious they were. Hey, don't worry. If the items on this list were in other shops, they might not be able to prepare everything for you. However, Zhenbao Pavilion will definitely satisfy you. Zhenbao Pavilion had a wide range of products, including herbs. However, 20,000 taels of silver will be enough for all these items. As for the rest, Chu Luiyue raised her brows slightly. Give me 100,000 taels of silver in banknotes. Second Master Yen can keep the rest. Because I want you to deliver the items on this list once every 3 days. What? Yan Gu, who was used to big occasions, could not help but widen his eyes. 200,000 taels of silver. That was 10 times, a whole month's worth. Difficult? No, no. Not at all. Zhenbao Pavilion will definitely not disappoint you. However, should I deliver these items to the Chu family? Yan Gu asked tentatively. Chu Luiyue turned around and looked in a certain direction outside the door, smiling meaningfully. Of course. I'm the first miss of the Chu family. The items I buy naturally have to be delivered through the main door. Want to spy on me? Chapter 8. The good-for-nothing Chu Luiyue from the Chu family is crazy. Almost overnight, the entire imperial city was discussing this matter. My cousin's third uncle works for the Chu family, and he saw with his own eyes that Zhenbao Pavilion's people respectfully delivered half a cart of herbs. Furthermore, they clearly said that they were delivering them to Chu Luiyue. Don't you think that's strange? That can't be, right? Everyone knows that Chu Luiyue is a good-for-nothing. How could she have anything to do with Zhenbao Pavilion? Half a cart of herbs from Zhenbao Pavilion. That must be a lot of money, right? Can she afford it? That's why I said she's crazy. Zhenbao Pavilion never does business that loses money. Where do you think she got the money from? Did the crown prince give it to her? Ha! The crown prince has never mentioned Chu Luiyue in all these years. Why would he do such a thing? Who knows where Chu Luiyue got the money? She even bought herbs. Does she think that she can rely on those herbs to turn herself from a good-for-nothing to a genius? Ha 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 ha. Everyone in the imperial city was full of sarcasm, waiting to see Chu Luiyue make a fool of herself. Crown Prince Mansion. In the study, a man in a purple brocade robe was reading the booklet on the table. He looked to be in his early 20s, with sword-like eyebrows and starry eyes. He was very handsome, and his every movement carried the unique noble aura of a superior. This person was none other than country Yao Chen's respected crown prince, Rong Jin. Your Highness, something seems to have happened to the Chu family. The crown prince's personal guard, Song Yuan, spoke carefully. Rong Jin looked up. What could have happened to the Chu family? Could it be Minmin? Rong Jin only realized something when he saw Song Yuan's strange expression, and he narrowed his eyes. Tell me, what happened? Song Yuan hurriedly told him everything that had happened to Chu Luiyue and Zhenbao Pavilion. This. I don't know where Big Chu Missy got the money to buy so many herbs from Zhenbao Pavilion. Those medicinal herbs were all sent in jade boxes, so it was impossible for others to know what was inside. But even so, he knew that with so many things just by thinking about it, they would definitely be worth a lot. Rong Jin knitted his brows, and his tone was impatient. What is she trying to do? If it wasn't for that engagement, how could he possibly put that trash of the Chu family in his eyes? All these years, Chu Luiyue was not only the shame of the Chu clan, but also a stain that he could not get rid of. Just thinking about it made him feel disgusted. Song Yuan said uncertainly, "That's right. Your Highness, although Chu Ning has been in dire straits these past few years, he was still in the good times in the past. It is not impossible for him to have some savings in his hands. The main point is, why did he buy so many medicinal herbs? Maybe. She just wants to try and solve her problem of being born a loser." There was still a month to go before the engagement. Was she delusional enough to think that she could turn the tide? Ridiculous. No one in the entire country Yao Chen could solve the problem of having an incomplete yuan meridian. If they really had a solution, they wouldn't have been reduced to such a state after so many years. She's not worth mentioning. She's just a joke. I'll break off the engagement with her sooner or later. Right now, the more important thing is Rong Xiu is coming back. At the mention of Rong Xiu, Song Yuan's expression changed. Yes. They'll arrive in the imperial city today. According to my investigation, the 7th prince only brought 2 servants this time. He's coming back with a simple outfit. Rong Jin sneered. At least he knows what's good for him. Unlike the other princes, Rong Xiu was born weak, so he was brought thousands of miles away to Mingyue Tianshan to recuperate. After so many years, he had only returned twice. The last time he came back was 3 years ago. Most people might not take the 7th prince to heart, and some people might not even remember his existence. However, Crown Prince Rong Jin did not think so. He was very vigilant about Rong Xiu's return this time and even sent people to secretly track him. Tell the people below to keep a close eye on him. If there are any abnormalities, report it immediately. Yes. Even though Song Yuan did not know why the Crown Prince valued the weak and powerless 7th prince so much, he still responded immediately. Oh right, Your Highness, another 5th grade fiend came to the hunting ground recently. When do you want to go take a look? Rong Jin pondered for a moment, and a dark light flashed across his eyes. In a few days, it will be this consort's birthday. This year's birthday banquet will be held at the hunting ground. Yes. The Chu family. Half a carriage of precious herbs was sent to Chu Luiyue and his daughter's yard ostentatiously. Chu Ning had yet to return, so Chu Luiyue moved the herbs into the house alone. Very quickly, she realized that there were many pairs of eyes secretly peeping outside the originally quiet yard. Chu Luiyue was very calm as if she did not notice anything. She even opened the jade box occasionally to check the quality of the herbs. Zhenbao Pavilion was indeed very attentive to her, and the items they sent were all of good quality. This was also very helpful for her recovery of her yuan meridian. At this moment, hurried footsteps could be heard from outside the yard. There were also men shouting sternly. Go! Capture Chu Luiyue. Chu Luiyue sneered in her heart. They really did come. She looked up and saw that a group of people had already kicked open the yard's door and rushed in. The man in the lead looked ferocious, and there were more than 10 strong men behind him. They looked like they were looking for trouble. Chu Luiyue squinted her eyes and finally recognized this man. Chu Liansheng. This person was Chu Xianmin's confidant and one of the accomplices who added fuel to the fire and killed the original Chu Luiyue. What a coincidence. She was just about to look for him, and he actually came knocking on her door. As they spoke, 2 men had already pounced on Chu Luiyue. Chu Luiyue's gaze was as sharp as a knife as she said sternly, "How dare you? How dare you? Who gave you the guts to trespass here?" Her question was powerful and resonant. Immediately, everyone present was stunned and subconsciously stopped in their tracks. Chu Liansheng was also shocked, but he immediately reacted and mocked, "Ha! Chu Luiyue, don't you know why we're here? Do you know how expensive Zhenbao Pavilion's herbs are? How can you afford them? You must have gotten your money through illegal means. I advise you to be more honest and hand over these things obediently. Then, follow us. Otherwise, don't blame us for being rude. Upon hearing this, Chu Luiyue looked around and put down the things in her hands. Oh. What if I don't do this? Chu Lianqing was stunned and then sneered. What right do you have to say no? He sized up Chu Luiyue, and his eyes were full of contempt. A good-for-nothing freeloader has been eating and drinking in the Chu family for so many years. It's already extremely embarrassing. Now, you've even used some shady means to get the money to buy these things. Chu Luiyue, you may be shameless, but the Chu family still wants to be. Chu Luiyue stared at him calmly and then walked forward. It seemed like he was going to surrender. Chu Lianqing became even more proud and gave the people beside him a look. Hurry up and put those things away. These are all crucial evidence. You can't. Slap. An extremely loud slap was heard. Inside and outside the courtyard, there was dead silence. Just now, Chu Luiyue actually slapped Chu Lianqing. Everyone knew that he was third Missy Chu Xianmin's confidant. Everyone usually gave him face when they saw him. Chu Luiyue must have lost his mind. How dare he hit him? You! How dare you hit me? Chu Lianqing was stunned. The burning pain on his face instantly ignited his anger. You're tired of living. As he spoke, he subconsciously raised his hand and slapped Chu Luiyue. However, his hand didn't land even after a long time. Instead, Chu Luiyue grabbed his wrist and gave him a second slap. Slap. Chapter 9. The air seemed to have solidified. Inside and outside the courtyard, the people who were prepared to laugh at Chu Luiyue were all stunned. Chu Luiyue must have eaten a bear's heart and leopard's guts. He actually dared to slap Chu Lianqing twice. In this cold and awkward atmosphere, Chu Lianqing was the first to react. The burning pain on his face and the sweet taste in his mouth reminded him of what had just happened. You little tch, how dare you hit me? Chu Lianqing's eyes widened in anger. He was extremely furious. He immediately pulled out the knife at his waist and aggressively slashed at Chu Luiyue. The sharp blade was about to cut Chu Luiyue's waist in half. If the knife landed, even if Chu Luiyue did not die, he would be crippled. However, Chu Luiyue did not move at all. Instead, he raised his head and stared straight at Chu Lianqing. He said, Chu Lianqing, are you going to kill the Chu family's eldest Missy in front of everyone? This sentence was like a bolt of lightning that exploded in Chu Lianqing's ears. The words, Chu family's eldest Missy, were like a curse that made him stop in his tracks. The tip of the knife was less than an inch away from Chu Luiyue. He instinctively looked at Chu Luiyue and met that pair of dark and quiet eyes. At this moment, he actually inexplicably felt a trace of a powerful and shocking pressure. Chu Luiyue's gaze was like a sharp knife that scraped every inch of his body. Swoosh! Chu Lianqing suddenly woke up. Yes. Although the young girl standing in front of him was dressed in tattered clothes and had a weak body, she was indeed the Chu family's eldest Missy. And he was just a servant who borrowed Chu Xianmin's power. This first slap is for not recognizing your status. Chu Luiyue took a step forward. Chu Lianqing subconsciously took a step back. This second slap is for not respecting your status. Chu Luiyue approached him again. Chu Lianqing's hand that was holding the knife trembled slightly. Even if I was born a good-for-nothing, the blood that flows in my veins is still the blood of the Chu clan. For so many years, I've been well-behaved and have never caused trouble. What about you guys? Each and every one of them was thinking of ways to bully and humiliate me. Have you ever thought about, where did you get the qualifications to do so? Chu Luiyue's interrogation finally made Chu Lianqing unable to rebut. Chu Luiyue. You're nothing but a complete and utter trash. It was the shame of the entire Chu clan. What right do you have to say such words? In this world, the strong were revered. You deserve what you have today. Although his words were tough, Chu Lianqing's voice was trembling. He knew that if he bullied Chu Luiyue in private, no one would pursue the matter. However, if the entire Chu clan was implicated, then it would be ugly. Chu Lianqing had always been cautious. However, this time, he was anxious because he did not know whether Song Lian and the other two were dead or alive. In addition, Chu Liuyue's subsequent actions were really unsettling. That was why he had impulsively brought people here. However, he had never thought that the timid and weak Chu Luiyue would actually dare to resist. When Chu Luiyue heard this, the corners of her mouth suddenly curled up and she laughed. It's true that I'm a good-for-nothing. However, you seem to have forgotten who my grandfather is. Who is my fiancé? Chu Lianqing suddenly broke out in cold sweat. Chu Liuyue's grandfather was naturally the current head of the Chu clan. As for her fiancé, he was the crown prince. Although in everyone's opinion, Chu Luiyue had no chance of marrying the crown prince, after all, the engagement was still in place. They could discuss this in private, but no one dared to say it in front of her face. Did you just call me a little bitch? Chu Liuyue's smile became even gentler. Then, are you scolding grandfather and the crown prince as well? Clang! Chu Lianqing's knife suddenly fell to the ground. His legs turned to jelly and his face turned pale. He almost collapsed to the ground. Chu Luiyue naturally looked down on the so-called grandfather and fiancé of the original body. If they had shown her a little bit of pity and concern, the original body would not have fallen into such a situation. However, it was not impossible for him to use it now. I didn't. Chu Lianqing stuttered. If this matter was spread out, regardless of whether it was the Chu clan or the crown prince, even if it was just for the sake of their reputation, they would not let him off. Chu Luiyue leisurely said, Now, do you want to break your right arm to apologize, or ask my grandfather and the crown prince to uphold justice? Chu Lianqing was shocked. Chu Luiyue actually wanted him to pay such a painful price. If he broke his right arm, wouldn't it mean that his entire cultivation career would be over? He gritted his teeth and secretly glanced at the person next to him. Now, he could only stall for time and let the third miss come forward. Since you can't do it yourself, then I will do it myself. Chu Luiyue did not give him any time at all. She quickly picked up the knife that he dropped on the ground and chopped it down without hesitation. Chu Lianqing was also a stage 3 warrior. Logically speaking, he should be able to dodge Chu Liuyue's knife. But he did not know why, when the knife flashed, he did not see how Chu Luiyue moved. Chi! Chu Lianqing's right arm was chopped off. Blood splattered all over the ground. Chu Lianqing let out a shrill scream as he was hit by the great pain. Everyone's heart trembled. They could not help but look at Chu Luiyue. The thin and weak girl stood there with her back straight. She held the knife in her hand and looked calm. It was as if she had just chopped off a tree branch and not a person's right arm. This made people even more fearful. Chu Luiyue, she had really changed into a different person. Even the people who were originally surrounding Chu Luiyue dismissed the thought of dealing with her when they saw this situation. What a joke. She had just mentioned the master and the crown prince. Who would dare to touch her in front of everyone? Some people hesitated and wanted to help Chu Lianqing up, but they could not move. What if Chu Luiyue went crazy and chopped them off too? At this moment, under the huge shock and fear, no one thought about how Chu Luiyue, who was born a loser, could deal with Chu Lianqing. Chu Luiyue casually threw the knife down and it rolled beside Chu Lianqing's broken arm. It was a bloody and horrible scene. Get lost. After saying that, she turned around and walked towards the medicinal herbs that were still piled up in the courtyard. Everything that happened today was just a warning to the others. She would definitely make these people pay back the pain and grievances that the original body had suffered 100 times over. What was a debt of 200,000 taels? What was a broken arm? Compared to Chu Liuyue's life, this was far from enough. Everyone inside and outside the courtyard looked at each other. They originally wanted to see Chu Luiyue make a fool of herself, but they did not expect, however, at this moment, familiar footsteps came from outside. A woman's exclamation could be heard all of a sudden. Liansheng. What's wrong with you? Everyone turned their heads to look, and their expressions became interesting. The person who came was none other than Chu Liansheng's mistress, third Missy Chu Xianmin. Chu Xianmin had suffered such a huge loss previously and could not take it lying down. Naturally, she would not let Chu Luiyue live peacefully, so she sent Chu Liansheng over. On the one hand, she wanted to see what kind of herbs Chu Luiyue had bought. On the other hand, she wanted to take the opportunity to teach her a lesson. However, she did not expect that halfway through, her subordinates would send news that there was a change in the situation. She hurried over and saw Chu Liansheng on the ground screaming non-stop. His right arm had been chopped off. Chu Liansheng wailed and crawled over, crying bitterly. Third Missy. Third Missy, you must make a decision for me. That little b*****. Big Missy chopped off my right arm. Chu Xianmin was instantly enraged. Everyone knew that Chu Liansheng was her man. Chu Luiyue's actions were undoubtedly a slap to her face. She looked at Chu Luiyue and suppressed the anger in her heart. Chapter 10. Chu Luiyue turned around and raised his eyebrows lazily. Third sister, I only punished a servant who offended his superior. Why are you so angry? Do you think that I, as your sister, can't even compare to a servant? That depends on whose servant he is. Chu Xianmin was currently in a fit of anger. If it weren't for the fact that there were many people watching from the side, she would have definitely rushed up and questioned Chu Luiyue harshly. She took a deep breath and forced a smile. Sister, your status is naturally more honorable than theirs, but as the saying goes, you have to look at the master before hitting a dog. Sister, you clearly know that Liansheng is my man, so why are you targeting him? This slash of yours directly ruined his cultivation career. It looked like she really wanted to stand up for her own man. The crowd watched and could not help but compare the two in their hearts. Chu Xianmin was very talented, but she did not put on airs. She was gentle and sensible. Now that she looked like this, it was obvious that she was furious. It was obvious that she cared a lot about her own men. Just this point alone was enough to be praised. On the other hand, Chu Luiyue was extremely arrogant even though he was a good-for-nothing. He was like a lunatic. Chu Luiyue suddenly realized something. Oh. Yes, I almost forgot that he's your man. Chu Xianmin was so angry that she wanted to vomit blood. Chu Luiyue was acting with her here. If she did not stand up for Chu Liansheng today, everyone would think that she, Chu Xianmin, was bullied by a good-for-nothing in the future. What reputation would she have then? Since sister has remembered, then no matter what, sister, please. Before Chu Xianmin could finish her sentence, she was interrupted by Chu Luiyue. So, it was your idea for him to bring people here to cause trouble? Chu Xianmin suddenly choked. Did you order Chu Liansheng to bring people to capture me and steal the herbs I bought? How? How could it be? Chu Xianmin subconsciously denied it. Chu Luiyue did not believe her. Would Chu Liansheng dare to do this without your orders? This question made Chu Xianmin speechless. It was quiet all around. Everyone was watching the show. Chu Liansheng was a smart man. He knew that if he let Chu Luiyue continue talking, it wouldn't do them any good. Third Miss. It's all my fault. Young Miss has a noble status, I shouldn't have offended her. If young Miss insists on telling the family head and His Highness the Crown Prince, I am willing to bear all the consequences. Chu Xianmin's face turned ugly. Chu Luiyue was using her engagement with the Crown Prince to pressure her. What the hell? Chu Luiyue had long known that she was not worthy of the Crown Prince, so she had never been ashamed to mention the engagement. Why now, what's with the noise? What are you all doing? Suddenly, an angry roar was heard. Upon hearing the voice, Chu Xianmin was elated and turned around to look. Great Elder. Chu Luiyue looked up and indeed saw First Elder, Chu Shao, walking over. Half a step behind him was an unfamiliar man. I asked him to come. Why? Do you have a problem with that? First Elder stood in front of Chu Xianmin and looked at Chu Luiyue with a frown. His tone was filled with undisguised disgust. Chu Xianmin calmed down. Actually, First Elder didn't know about this. However, since he was willing to back her up, she was more than happy to do so. She calmed down a lot and greeted the man behind First Elder with a smile. Vice Captain Song, why are you here? The person was the Crown Prince's personal guard, Song Yuan. Song Yuan hurriedly bowed and said politely, Young Mississippi, nice to meet you. Third Mississippi, naturally. Song Yuan has something to give you. It was obvious that he was here to give something to the Crown Prince. Everyone's expression changed slightly. They had long heard that the Crown Prince was in love with Chu Xianmin. Now, it seemed like it was true. Chu Xianmin was also overjoyed. The envious gazes around her made her feel very comfortable. Her cheeks blushed slightly as if she was shy. If Brother Jean has something to give me, he can just send someone to do it. Why would he trouble Vice Captain Song to deliver it personally? Song Yuan took out a letter and handed it over with both hands. He chuckled. He smiled and said, The Crown Prince's birthday is around the corner. I'm here to deliver an invitation to you. If it's someone else's, naturally, someone will deliver it. But if it's yours, His Highness the Crown Prince specifically instructed me to deliver it to you personally. Everyone then realized that it was an invitation to the Crown Prince's birthday. It was normal for the Crown Prince to invite guests to his birthday banquet, but there were not many people who could make Song Yuan deliver it personally. It was obvious that he treated Chu Xianmin differently. Thank you, Vice Captain Song. Chu Xianmin took the invitation, and her heart was naturally filled with pride and joy. She knew that the Crown Prince liked her, but his attitude had always been ambiguous. Now, he was finally willing to do so. Soon, the entire imperial city would know about this. The Crown Prince had the intention of making her his wife. She held the invitation and purposely asked Chu Luiyue, Sister, your engagement is about to be announced. Sis, speaking of which, your engagement ceremony with Brother Jean is just around the corner. You should have received the invitation long ago, right? Laughter came from the crowd. Invitation? His Highness the Crown Prince had probably already forgotten about this person. Chu Xianmin said sincerely, You haven't been invited to Brother's birthday banquet in the past few years. You haven't attended Brother Jin's birthday banquets for the past few years. You'll definitely attend this year, right? Chu Luiyue sneered. Rong Jin did invite the original owner of the body to his birthday banquet in the past. The original owner of the body went with high expectations, but she was ridiculed and insulted by countless people. After that, she refused to go, so Rong Jin naturally did not invite her again. Naturally, she did not have an invitation this time. Chu Xianmin covered her mouth in shock. Ah. Sister, you don't have one? This. She flipped through the invitation in her hand and seemed to be in a difficult position. I'm sorry, sister. I didn't know you didn't. First Elder stroked his beard in satisfaction. Chu Luiyue, that good-for-nothing, almost ruined the marriage between the Chu family and the Crown Prince. Luckily, Minmin was favored by the Crown Prince. What's a good-for-nothing like her going? To embarrass herself? Thinking of this, he looked at Chu Luiyue again, and his expression became cold. Kneel down now. Chu Luiyue looked at him coldly. First Elder, even if you want me to kneel, there should be a reason, right? The First Elder frowned. He pointed at the herbs and said angrily, You still have the cheek to ask. Tell me, where did you get the money to buy these things? Song Yuan glanced at Chu Luiyue. This is the rumored good-for-nothing from the Chu family, Chu Luiyue. I've never paid attention to her before, and the Crown Prince doesn't even know what she looks like. I didn't expect her to be so restless at this juncture. What a joke. Chu Xianmin felt uneasy when she saw Song Yuan's gaze land on Chu Luiyue. Song Lian was actually Song Yuan's younger cousin. The crown prince might not be unaware of this matter as he acted as the middleman. Even though he had never said anything, his attitude clearly implied that she did it. However, Song Yuan probably didn't know if Song Lian was dead or alive. If he found out, Chu Luiyue was quiet for a while. Just when everyone thought she was going to admit it, she suddenly glanced at Song Yuan and spoke with a half-smile. "First Elder, where do you think I got so much money from? There aren't many people in the imperial city who would do this, right?" First Elder was about to continue scolding her, but he was suddenly stunned. Chu Luiyue means. Did the crown prince give it to her? He looked at Song Yuan with uncertainty. Song Yuan was also confused. Why would the crown prince give her money? However, there really doesn't seem to be any other explanation. Third sister, you don't have to feel guilty. I won't go to the crown prince's birthday banquet this year. Chu Xianmin's eyes flashed with pride, but she heard Chu Luiyue say word by word. Chapter 11. B*TCH. B*TCH. Chu Xianmin angrily returned to her room. Her mind kept replaying Chu Luiyue's words, and she could only gnash her teeth in hatred. What engagement ceremony? She clearly did it on purpose. Recalling Chu Luiyue's calm expression, Chu Xianmin felt a ball of fire in her chest. Pack. She suddenly slammed the door shut. What are you doing? A woman's voice suddenly came from the room. Chu Xianmin immediately looked up. After seeing the person clearly, she immediately pounced over with grievance. Mother. This time, you must uphold justice for Minmin. I'm going to be bullied to death by that B*TCH. This woman was Lu Yao, Lu Min's birth mother. She maintained herself very well. Although she was already in her 30s, she still looked very beautiful. Her every move was naturally charming. Lu Min usually doted on her only daughter very much. However, in the face of Chu Xianmin's cries this time, there was no heartache on her face. Instead, there was some dissatisfaction. I was only away for a few days, and so many things have happened. You've really disappointed me. That Chu Luiyue is just a good-for-nothing who can't be seen in public. What tricks can she have? You're actually in such a sorry state because of her. Chu Xianmin rarely saw her mother so stern. She could not help but straighten her body, but her heart felt even worse. Mother, you don't know, but this Chu Luiyue seems to have changed into a different person these few days. Her actions are very strange. It's not that I can't win against her, but she's just too cunning. Chu Xianmin gritted her teeth in hatred when she thought of the losses she suffered at the hands of Chu Luiyue these few days. Not only did she let me take 200,000 taels of silver for free, but she's now using her engagement with the crown prince to suppress me. Lu Yao frowned and became even more dissatisfied. Speaking of which, I haven't had the time to look for you. What's with the 200,000 taels? Even if the Lu family is rich, I'm no longer a part of the Lu family. Why did she suddenly ask for so much? Chu Xianmin felt a little guilty and immediately explained the situation tactfully. Seeing that Lu Yao's expression was getting uglier, she rolled her eyes and hurriedly acted coquettishly. Mother, don't grandfather and the others like me very much? They won't not help, right? But this is too much. Lu Yao turned her face away, feeling very frustrated. Although she was a member of the Lu family, she was actually a concubine's child. Her status was not high, and the Chu family she married into was gradually declining. All these years, it was all thanks to Chu Xianmin's outstanding performance that the mother and daughter pair could hold their heads high in the Lu family. However, if he were to ask for 200,000 yuan all of a sudden, he would definitely become a laughing stock in the Lu clan. From the corner of her eye, Lu Yao saw that her daughter's expression wasn't looking too good. She reached out a finger and tapped her daughter's head. You! Why don't you think about why she likes you? Isn't it because you're talented and the crown prince likes you? Otherwise, who would take you seriously? Let mother ask you, will you be able to take the top spot in the academy after a month? Chu Xianmin disagreed. Of course. Her talent is considered top-notch in the entire country Yaochen. But the problem now is the engagement between the crown prince and that little B***tch. Lu Yao didn't think much of it and smiled meaningfully. Silly child, what are you worried about? The person who doesn't want this marriage to happen the most isn't you, but the crown prince. Let her jump around for the next few days. When the time comes, she'll be in for it. Chu Luyue brought up the engagement with the crown prince and shocked everyone. She successfully shut the mouths of First Elder and the rest, making those who wanted to see her make a fool of herself return angrily. When the courtyard quietened down again, she finally placed all the herbs in the house. Then, she found a big black pot and started boiling them. If she had force, she wouldn't have to go through so much trouble. She could just use her force to form a flame to extract the herbs. Unfortunately, due to the current circumstances, she could only use the most primitive method. Although this would cause the herbs to lose their potency, she had ordered a total of 10 batches at Jinbao Pavilion. In total, there shouldn't be a big difference. After the water boiled, she put the herbs in one by one. Soon, a fresh medicinal fragrance filled the air. Because the characteristics of the herbs were different, the time to add them was also different. She calculated the time seriously. While carefully scooping out the herbs that had been extracted, she added the remaining herbs in bit by bit. The color of the medicinal liquid also changed continuously. As for the medicinal fragrance, it grew even stronger. Chu Luyue took a deep breath. Immediately, she felt a faint warm air flow into her body. She felt much more relaxed. Looks like it's not bad. She muttered softly. As the heavenly princess of the Tianling dynasty and with the talent to become a celestial physician, Chu Luyue had read almost all the medical books she could in her previous life. As long as she had enough herbs, repairing her Yuan meridian wasn't a difficult task for her. Chu Ning's anxious voice suddenly came from outside the door. Chu Luyue walked over to open the door curiously. As expected, she saw Chu Ning walking over quickly. Because he was in too much of a hurry, he didn't care about his injured leg. He limped over and seemed to be staggering a little. Father, why are you back so early today? Chu Luyue asked curiously. Ever since Chu Ning was injured, he was sent to work in one of the Chu family shops. He usually left early and returned late. Are you okay? Chu Luyue suddenly understood. It seemed that Chu Ning knew what happened here. Otherwise, he wouldn't have reacted like this. She chuckled. Father, you're too worried about It's only been half a day. What could have happened? Quickly come in and rest. As she spoke, she went to help him. However, Chu Ning grabbed her hand and stared at her. He wanted to say something but stopped himself. Previously, he was busy in the shop. When he heard that something happened to you, he hurriedly asked for leave and rushed back. When he entered the courtyard just now, he saw the eye-catching bloodstains in the courtyard. Seeing that his daughter seemed to be fine, Chu Ning's heart became heavier. The hand that grabbed Chu Liyue's wrist unconsciously tightened. Why you really chopped off Chu Lianqing's arm? Chu Liyue's expression didn't change as he nodded calmly. Yes. He wanted to snatch my things, so I naturally couldn't let him bully me. Chopping off his arm was just a warning to others. Chu Ning spoke with difficulty after a long time. He's Chu Xianmin's man. Aren't you clearly going against her by doing this? She's not an easy person to get along with. Chu Luyue was a little hurt from his grip, so he patted his hand and comforted him. Father, why are you thinking so much? If I didn't do this, would she really treat me as her sister? Chu Ning was speechless. Yes, because of the marriage agreement with the crown prince, Chu Xianmin was probably one of the people who wanted to get rid of you, the most. But, no buts, father. Don't worry. I know what I'm doing. As Chu Luyue spoke, he raised his chin toward the room and smiled. Oh yes, I recently got a folk prescription that's good for recovery. Do you want to try it? When she was brewing the medicine for herself, she didn't forget about Chu Ning's injury. Previously, she had secretly checked his pulse. As long as he recuperated, he would completely recover in less than half a month. As she spoke, she pulled Chu Ning into the room. Chu Ning didn't move. He looked at the girl in front of him. He couldn't be more familiar with that face, but why did it feel so unfamiliar at this moment? After a while, he finally spoke with trembling lips. Chapter 12. Once he said that, the air seemed to freeze. However, in the blink of an eye, Chu Luiyue turned around and asked in surprise, "Father, what happened?" "Father, what are you talking about?" Her puzzled look really made it impossible for anyone to doubt her. However, Chu Ning was also very conflicted as he kept thinking about what had happened in the past 2 days. Ever since you went out to buy things and went missing and came back very late, everything seemed to have changed. The timid and weak you of the past was gone, replaced by a calm and composed girl. Previously, when she confronted First Elder and Chu Xianmin, he thought that she had been wronged and could not hold it in. However, the series of things that happened after that was far beyond his expectations. You used to treat Chu Xianmin as a good sister and trusted her a lot. Why would she go against her now? Furthermore, Yu has always been timid. She doesn't even dare to speak loudly, let alone cut off someone's arm. Also, I didn't give you any money for the herbs from Zhenbao Pavilion. How did you buy them? The more Chu Ning spoke, the more guilty he felt. Even his voice was trembling. Previously, he only felt that something was wrong, but now that he thought about it carefully, everything was strange. Chu Luiyue quietly waited for him to finish before asking softly, "Is there anything else? Is there anything else? Other than this, do you have any other doubts?" Chu Ning shook his head. "Wasn't that enough? I know that I have indeed become a different person these 2 days, but there is a reason for that. I don't care about others, but since you have doubts in your heart, I will naturally explain it to you." Chu Luiyue gently and firmly held his hand. "Come in. I will tell you in detail." Chu Ning subconsciously followed her in. After Chu Ning sat down, Chu Luiyue closed the door. She looked at the herbs that were being boiled and added 2 new herbs. Chu Ning looked at her series of actions and became more certain of his guess. "You did not know this in the past. I'm afraid, you probably guessed it. Something did happen when I came back late the day before. Chu Xianmin sent someone to assassinate me." Once Chu Luiyue spoke, Chu Ning was so shocked that he stood up from his seat. What? He had guessed this previously, but he did not expect Chu Xianmin to be so ruthless as to kill him directly. Chu Luiyue looked at him and nodded seriously. Then, he recounted the events of that day in detail. Of course, she cleverly concealed the fact that the original body was dead and that she had replaced it. She had the memories of the original body, so she could mix the truth with lies, and there was no flaw at all. Thus, in Chu Ning's ears, it became Chu Xianmin trying to kill you, for her own selfish reasons. So, from that moment onwards, you finally saw her true colors. Moreover, I finally understood that blindly enduring and giving in would absolutely not be able to exchange for peaceful days. Only by becoming stronger would I be able to avoid being bullied by others. Chu Ning was speechless for a long time. That's right. How could he not know this? But now, he was suffering from an old illness and was unable to continue cultivating. What could he do? It's all because father is useless. He lowered his head dejectedly and muttered in a low voice. Chu Luiyue shook his head and said, "Father, I still remember when I was young. Father, I still remember that time when I went to the Crown Prince's birthday banquet. I was bullied by everyone and went home crying. You insisted on going to see His Majesty to seek justice for Yuer and make those people apologize to Yuer. If it weren't for you, I don't know how badly you would have been bullied." Chu Ning's status back then was no longer the same as before. One could imagine how difficult it was to do that. Even though those people's attitudes were very perfunctory, it was enough to prove that Chu Ning was willing to give up everything for his daughter. Chu Ning's body trembled as he slowly raised his head in disbelief. Chu Luiyue gave him one last reassurance. You told you, that no matter if it was in the past or in the future, you would do your best to protect you, if you was wronged. Am I right? Chu Ning's eyes turned red immediately. He had indeed only told you this sentence back then. His voice was a little choked. You, My you, The person in front of him was still his daughter. Chu Liuyue's nose was a little sore. How would a father feel when he lost his daughter? When she died back then, she didn't know of her father. Whenever she saw Chu Ning, she would always think of her father. Now that she was alive as Chu Luiyue, she would naturally treat Chu Ning well and not let there be another sad father in this world. Her style was very different from her original self. Now that she had made things clear, it would be easier for her to do things in the future. After encountering such a life and death crisis, it was normal for her personality to change drastically, right? After a moment, Chu Ning clenched his fists and gritted his teeth. This Chu Xianmin is too much. I must think of a way to make her pay with her blood. Chu Liuyue's eyes flashed slightly, and he took the opportunity to say, Father, actually, what she did this time helped me instead. I happened to stumble upon a fortuitous encounter in the forest. I picked up a medical book. Chu Ning was shocked. Medical book? You can understand it? Medical books were extremely hard to come by and were usually difficult to understand. Normal people couldn't learn it by themselves. Even if they had a specialized master to guide them, they might not be able to understand it. But you, actually, Chu Luiyue nodded. I can only understand a little now, so I wanted to try following the prescription in the book. It seems quite simple. Chu Luiyue said this lie without batting an eyelid. In fact, most medical books were quite simple to her. Chu Ning sluggishly glanced at the herbs that were being boiled. Suddenly, he stood up and walked over quickly. The color of the medicine was pure, and the aroma was rich and clean. Although he didn't know much, he was quite knowledgeable. It wasn't easy to make a perfect medicine soup. The order of adding the herbs, the dosage, the method of filtering out the residue, everything was of the utmost importance. You, only tried it for the first time, but she could easily make such a medicine soup. A thought suddenly appeared in his mind, and it made him excited. He looked at Chu Luiyue almost anxiously. You, Is this really your first time trying it? Chu Luiyue blinked. Yes. What's wrong, father? Is there something wrong? Of course not. This was simply inconceivable. This means that you, might have the aptitude to become a celestial physician. Her Yuan meridian was blocked, so she couldn't cultivate. However, if she could become a celestial physician. No, even if she only had a little talent, her fate would be very different. Chu Ning seemed to have gone from hell to heaven in an instant. He was extremely excited. If this was true, then no one would dare to bully you, in the future. You, come with me tomorrow to visit someone. There were only a few celestial physicians in country Yaochen, and he had some friendship with one of them. Why not let that person see if you, really had the potential in this area? Of course, Chu Luiyue knew what he was thinking about. After thinking for a while, he said, Father, why don't we wait for a while? It's too ostentatious now. Chu Ning was stunned. That was true. If he went now, he was afraid that someone would come looking for trouble, then let's wait for a while. He could also see if the medicine you, was trying to make was really useful. Thinking of this, he felt much more at ease. By the way, you, how did you escape from the hands of those people that day? Chu Luiyue was taken aback. She couldn't say that because she was powerful in her previous life, even if she didn't have force, those stage 3 warriors were no match for her at all. Her eyes turned, and a tall man's silhouette suddenly appeared in her mind. The faintly discernible smooth lines outlined an extremely simple but intoxicating picture. She opened a jade box and said unintentionally, "Ah, I saw the seventh prince. That day, I happened to meet the seventh prince, so he helped me." Chu Ning paused. "The seventh prince? Isn't he recuperating at Mingyue Tianshan? When did he return to the imperial capital?" Chapter 13. Chu Luiyue suddenly recalled that the seventh prince, Rong Xiu, had indeed left the capital early due to his poor health. He had only returned once or twice in all these years. Even in the eyes of some court officials, the seventh prince, Rong Xiu, did not have much of a presence, let alone the original owner of this body, who had been bullied all year round in the residence. In the original owner's memories, there was pitifully little information related to the seventh prince, Rong Xiu. Thus, Chu Luiyue did not realize that he was not in the capital at all. However, there is indeed news in the past 2 days that the seventh prince is coming back. Did you say that you met the seventh prince in the forest outside the city?" Chu Ning asked doubtfully. Chu Luiyue secretly sighed in relief and went with the flow. "Yes. I also found it strange at the time. I didn't expect to meet him at the right time. No wonder. It seems that the seventh prince has indeed returned. It's just that there is no news in the capital." Chu Ning frowned in thought, but did not take this matter to heart. After all, they were descendants of the imperial family. They naturally had their reasons for doing what they said. Moreover, he was no longer in the court and had been away from these disputes for a long time. There was no point in thinking about it. He lovingly rubbed Chu Luiyue's head. "This time, we really owe the seventh prince a huge favor. If there is a chance, father will definitely thank him in person." Chu Luiyue cursed in his heart. What favor? Wasn't it just taking up his jade lake for a while? But seeing the relieved expression on Chu Ning's face, she did not explain much and quickly changed the topic to the medicinal herbs that were being boiled. "Father, I boiled this according to the recipe. It is said that it is good for old injuries. Try it." As Chu Luiyue spoke, she scooped a bowl of medicine and opened the jade box at the side. From it, she took out an inch-long red stem that was as thick as a thumb. She clenched it hard, and red juice dripped into the medicine. Then, Chu Luiyue handed the bowl of medicine to Chu Ning with both hands. Chu Ning lowered his head to look at the light red medicine and was somewhat uncertain. Is this really useful?" Chu Luiyue naturally knew what he was worried about. No one would be at ease when an ignorant person tried to boil medicine for the first time. He did not expect it to be effective. He was afraid that even if it was not poisonous, it would still be good. She couldn't tell Chu Ning her true identity, nor could she tell him that his old injuries were nothing in her eyes. She could only let him have a try. Is earnestly following that medical book, Chu Luiyue was just about to explain when Chu Ning took the bowl from her hands. He chuckled and said, "Since you, has worked hard for father, then father naturally can't let you, down." As he spoke, he drained the bowl of soup in one gulp. After he finished, he showed the bowl to's father, obediently drank finished to the tu. To the you. Even if he wasn't sure what effect this bowl of medicine that you had brewed would have, he was still willing to drink it. Because this was his most precious daughter. Chu Luiyue was startled. Looking at the hearty smile on Chu Ning's face, he subconsciously asked, "This is yours first time trying it?" "I don't have any experience." "Father, aren't you afraid that this bowl of medicine don't you have experience now? With father here, you need not worry at all. Whatever you want to do, just do it." Chu Luiyue suddenly felt a surge of warmth in his heart. In an instant, his whole body seemed to have warmed up. The betrayal she had experienced in her previous life had almost completely frozen her heart. Even her bones and blood were frozen. But now, looking at Chu Ning's smiling and doting appearance, she was suddenly moved. She lowered her eyes to hide the ripples in her eyes. After a long time, she finally said, "Father, you will definitely recover." Chu Ning was stunned. Then he heard her say word by word, "One day in the future, father will definitely become as powerful as before. No, you will become even more powerful. Chu Ning smiled bitterly in his heart. More powerful than before? His leg already couldn't recover, and his cultivation couldn't improve anymore. How could it be easy? But he couldn't bear to say these words to hurt his daughter. He smiled and pinched Chu Liuyue's cheek, then asked, "Right, the money to buy these herbs." Chu Liuyue's eyes flickered slightly. This money was given by the crown prince. You don't have to worry. Chu Ning was skeptical, but seeing Chu Liuyue's determined expression, he didn't ask any more. He gave a few more words of advice before leaving. After all, he had applied for leave to come back. Since his daughter was fine, he naturally should go back. After Chu Liyue and the others left, she continued to boil the herbs. Chu Ning's injury wasn't a big problem. She just needed to boil some herbs for a few hours. What came next was her main event. Time flew by, and soon, it was night. The medicinal fragrance in the room grew stronger. Even though she had closed the windows and doors, the courtyard was still filled with a refreshing fragrance. But their place was already very remote. Coupled with the farce during the day, no one in the Chu family wanted to come here. The crescent moon hung high in the sky. Both inside and outside the room, it was quiet. Chu Liyue poured all the medicinal soup into the wooden tub prepared by the side. The rising steam mixed with the rich medicinal fragrance assaulted her face. Then, she untied her belt and prepared to take off her clothes. Even though her body was very thin and weak, she already had the exquisite curves of a young lady. Her clothes fell to the ground, revealing her fair and smooth shoulders. Dong! The sound of a collision suddenly came from outside. Chu Liyue quickly put on her clothes, walked to the window, and opened it to look outside. Who is it? The courtyard was silent. She could only vaguely see a white figure flashing by on the wall in the distance. But when she tried to take a closer look, it had already disappeared without a trace. She waited vigilantly for a while, but there was still no movement. So, she stopped looking. Just as she was about to lock the window again, her heart skipped a beat. Could it be that Shua came? Other than that, she couldn't think of anyone else who would come here. But why did it leave again? After thinking for a moment, Chu Liyue closed the window but didn't lock it. If it came back, it could also come in through this window. After doing all this, she finally took off her clothes and entered the tub. Blazing energy flowed through her skin and into her body. Chu Liyue's face was almost instantly filled with blood. Her face was flushed red. This body's yuan meridian was incomplete, and her constitution was very weak. It was naturally difficult for her to withstand such a powerful surge of energy. Chu Liyue opened the last jade box beside her and took out the emerald green cold jade cloud pearl, which was the size of a longan, and put it in her mouth. An ice-cold aura that seeped into his heart instantly rushed into his lungs. Waves of pain came from all over her body. It was cold on the outside and hot on the inside. It was as if she was experiencing ice and fire at the same time. However, only such intense stimulation could activate her yuan meridian and repair it. Chu Liyue slowly closed her eyes. Within his dantian, a ripple suddenly appeared on the small lake that had been transformed from the incomplete transparent book page. Outside the Chu family, in a narrow and dark alley, a tall figure was hidden in the night. The cold moonlight shone down, but it couldn't compare to the clear splendor in his eyes. Behind him, a white lion was squatting pitifully. There was a bump on its head. It was obvious that it had just been beaten. Rong Xiu stood with his hands behind his back and looked quietly at the dark and quiet courtyard. His voice was slightly cold. Chapter 14. Chu Liuyue's body was like a sponge, crazily absorbing the power of the medicinal herbs. Hot and cold, two extreme powers flowed in her body, nourishing every inch of her flesh and blood. Continuous pain came one after another. Chu Liyue bit her lips tightly, a trace of blood seeping out of the corner of her mouth. But from beginning to end, she did not cry out in pain. Instead, she forcefully endured and swallowed all the torture. The damaged yuan meridian in her body was like a dried-up river in the cracked earth. When the power surged, it was like a torrential downpour. In the past, Chu Liuyue's body could not retain the power and could only watch as it flowed away. But now, the continuous impact of the waves of power finally caused a slight change in the yuan meridian in her body. The dried-up and broken yuan meridian gradually became lustrous and started to extend. Time slowly passed. The color of the medicinal herbs in the bathtub also gradually became lighter. The power contained in the medicinal herbs was almost completely absorbed by Chu Liyue. Chu Liyue was shocked to find that a portion of the medicinal herb's power had entered her body and nourished her yuan meridian, causing the damaged part to extend. The remaining portion flowed into the small lake in her dantian. The lake was extremely small and light in color. When the power entered it, it magically disappeared, as if it was swallowed by something. Chu Liyue observed for a long time and found that the lake was like a bottomless pit. Other than the ripples, there was no trace of the power. She became more and more curious. This lake was transformed from that transparent and incomplete page. The mysterious blood-red rune that had appeared at the very beginning had never appeared again since that day. What was it? How did it come about? She searched through the memories of the original body but could not find any related memories. It was as if it had appeared out of thin air. Most importantly, she had never seen this thing before, but she felt an inexplicable sense of familiarity. It was as if it was brought about by her rebirth. Unable to find out what was going on, Chu Liyue decided not to think about it and focused on repairing her yuan meridian. A night passed in the blink of an eye. Chu Liyue only got up in the morning when the medicinal effects were almost completely absorbed. After a simple tidying up, Chu Liyue found a few pieces of wood and made a simple plum blossom pile in the yard. He also carved a wooden figure and stood beside it. Finally, he tied a sandbag to each of his hands and feet and began to practice. The conditions were indeed very simple, but in her current situation, this was already the most convenient and fastest way she could find to quickly increase her physical strength. The Chu clan had a special training ground, but she had always been ostracized. If she went there, she might cause some unnecessary trouble. Although she wasn't afraid of trouble, she didn't want to waste time on those things. Previously, she had made an example out of them and even brought up her marriage agreement with the crown prince to intimidate First Elder, Chu Xianmin, and the others. She wanted to make them fearful and quiet down for a while. She had to make use of this time to adjust her body to its best condition. Not long after running in the yard, her forehead started to sweat. Her entire body felt as heavy as lead. Chu Liyue felt helpless. This body was really too weak. If she didn't tidy it up properly, she wouldn't even be able to completely absorb the medicine's effects, let alone other things. Gradually, her clothes were almost drenched in sweat. It was July, the hottest time of the year. One could only imagine how tough it was to exercise so vigorously under the sun. Her lips were very pale, and sweat flowed down her cheeks. A few strands of black hair stuck to her face, making her look very haggard. When her body's physical strength broke through the limit, her legs went soft, and she almost knelt on the ground. However, she didn't stop. Instead, she walked to the wooden figure, took a deep breath, and began to practice her attacking moves. After she broke through to become a Stage 3 warrior at the age of 7 in her previous life, she stopped practicing in this area and focused on higher-level martial arts techniques and mystic talismans. Fortunately, she knew the most exquisite and ruthless moves. Now that she had picked them up again, they were very helpful to her. Bang! 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 In the quiet yard, only the dull sound of her body hitting the wooden stake could be heard. Chu Liyue trained herself crazily as if she didn't know what fatigue was. Long Hu shop was a weapon shop under the Chu family's name. It usually dealt with swords, sabers, spears, swords, and halberds. Chu Ning was the second in command here. As he had some understanding of various weapons in the past, he was sent here after he was injured. Although he was the second in command, his status wasn't very high. He had always been suppressed by his second brother, Chu Xianmin's father, and was often ostracized by all kinds of servants. However, Chu Ning realized that these people seemed to be targeting him more today. When he returned to the shop, he frowned when he saw that some of the swords were placed in an inappropriate position. Xiao Song, these things are so messy. Why didn't you clean them up? However, Wu Song sat still and continued to eat the plum. He said lazily, can't you clean them up yourself? Can't you see that I'm busy? Once he said that, a few people in the shop looked over. Anger rose in Chu Ning's heart, but Wu Song rolled his eyes again and sneered. Do you still think you're the Chu family's first young master? Why don't you take a look at yourself? Everyone laughed secretly and waited to see Chu Ning make a fool of himself. Everyone knew that his daughter, Chu Luyue, had completely offended the third missy, Chu Xianmin. The future of this father and daughter pair would most likely be even more difficult. They might even be chased out of the Chu family very soon. Chu Ning took a deep breath and emphasized. Does this mean that you're not willing to clean them up? Wu Song didn't care. He finished the last plum, clapped his hands, stood up, and walked to the side. He reached out and overturned all the things that were placed on the table. Daggers and swords fell to the ground with clanking sounds. Look, isn't it even messier now? I think you should clean them up yourself. Haha. Wu Song laughed arrogantly as he spoke. As long as Chu Ning left, he could become the second in command with the help of Chu Yan, the first in command. Chu Ning clenched his fists tightly. Wu Song snorted in disdain. Oh, you want to fight? The second in command hasn't improved in years, right? Why don't we spar? As he spoke, he purposely glanced at Chu Ning's legs. This glance made Chu Ning explode in anger. He threw a punch. Wu Song retreated backwards and dodged the punch in a flash. Ha, you're just... Before he could finish his mocking laughter, Chu Ning took a few steps forward and threw a second punch. Bang! Wu Song was caught off guard and was hit squarely. He fell to the ground. Blood flowed from his nose and mouth. However, Chu Ning did not let him go. Instead, he followed closely behind, grabbed his collar, and gave him a good beating. Punches after punches landed and Wu Song was soon knocked unconscious. Everyone was dumbfounded by what they saw. Wu Song was not weak. Logically speaking, how could Chu Ning, who was half crippled, be faster than him? Dong! Chu Ning slammed his head to the ground. He stopped when his hand was bleeding. He looked around with a sharp gaze. Who else wants to spar? Everyone subconsciously took a step back. The weak and easy to bully Chu Ning seemed to have changed. Chu Ning wiped the blood off his hand and turned around. Suddenly, he paused. No. When he rushed over just now, it seemed that his movements were faster than before. Moreover, the force in his body seemed to flow more smoothly. He slowly lowered his head and looked at his right calf. He didn't know why, but he suddenly remembered the bowl of medicine that you handed to him. Chapter 15. Chu Luyue only ended the day's training when the sun set. She didn't even need to look to know that her body was covered in bruises. However, she felt very carefree. Not only could she fully utilize the medicinal effects, but she could also rapidly improve her physical fitness. It was also beneficial for her future cultivation. When Chu Ning returned, he immediately saw the plum blossom piles and other things in the courtyard. At the side, a skinny girl was removing the sandbags from her hands and feet. Even though the sky was already dark, he could still see that she was in a sorry state. Chu Ning's heart instantly ached. You, Chu Luyue looked up and smiled at him. Father. Words of comfort and persuasion were at the tip of his tongue, but he suddenly couldn't say them. Chu Ning knew that after the previous incident, Yuva had indeed been greatly affected and changed completely. It was obvious that she was working hard to become stronger. The only thing he could do was to support and protect her to the best of his ability. The medicine you brewed yesterday seems to be very useful. Chu Ning walked over and helped her wipe her sweat. Even though he tried his best to restrain himself, he still couldn't hide his excitement and curiosity. Chu Luiyue was pleasantly surprised. Really? Chu Ning nodded and didn't tell her what happened in the shop. He only said that he suddenly felt much better than before. It seems like, really has the talent to become a celestial physician. Chu Ning sighed with emotion. If he had discovered this earlier, wouldn't have had to suffer so much all these years. Chu Luiyue smiled and winked. It's good that it's useful. As for this talent, it's not too late to discover it now. Chu Ning thought that she was comforting him and nodded. Yes, recuperate well during this period of time. After some time, we'll find you a good master. Chu Luiyue smiled but didn't say anything. Master? Even if all the celestial physician in country Yaochen were added up, they might not be enough to be her master. Oh yes, your birthday is coming soon. When the time comes, what do you plan to do about your marriage agreement with the Crown Prince? Chu Ning asked hesitantly. Previously, because the father and daughter were in dire straits and his daughter still had some fantasies about the Crown Prince, he did not mention this matter. Now that everything had started anew, it was time to consider this question. After all, there was less than a month left. Chu Luiyue smiled coldly. Let's wait and see. She was not the one who panicked first. That night, Shui appeared as usual, but there was a bump on her head. Chu Luiyue asked, and Shui lowered its head, feeling wronged. Was it easy? Clearly, its master had agreed for it to come, but in the end, it was beaten. When it came yesterday, it did not know that it would see Chu Luiyue taking off her clothes. This was infuriating. Chu Luiyue looked at him for a while. The injury wasn't serious, so she didn't pay it any mind. She let him lie on the bed while she began to adjust her breathing. She only fell into a deep sleep in the latter half of the night. After Chu Luiyue fell asleep, Shui opened her eyes and moved closer to Chu Luiyue, allowing her gentle power to overflow and envelop Chu Luiyue. The disputes in the Chu family were quickly forgotten by everyone. This was because there was a new commotion in the imperial city. The seventh prince, Rong Xiu, had returned from Mingyue Tianshan. Although he was dressed lightly and kept a low profile, His Majesty's imperial edict immediately made His Highness the seventh prince the focus of everyone's discussion. The seventh prince, Rong Xiu, had been away for a long time. Now that he had finally returned, the emperor was overjoyed and directly gave him the title of princely. He was given the princely mansion. If one thought about it carefully, they would be able to sense the multiple meanings behind this imperial edict. Firstly, this proved that the seventh prince would stay in the imperial city from now on. Secondly, this showed that the emperor valued and liked the seventh prince very much. One had to know that the emperor had 9 princes. 3 of them had died young, and 6 were left. Other than the eldest son, Rong Jin, who was made the crown prince the moment he was born, among the remaining 8 princes, only the 5th prince, Rong Qi, who was born from the same mother as the crown prince, was conferred the title of Prince Ping. From this, one could tell how big of a commotion Rong Xiu's title of princely would cause. Originally, no one had much of an impression of him and didn't pay much attention to the return of the frail 7th prince. However, now that he was conferred the title of princely as soon as he returned to the imperial city, it really made people overthink. Almost overnight, the princely mansion became a bustling place. Many people sent in invitations to see the princely, but the princely mansion rejected them all, claiming that the princely was tired from traveling and needed to rest. Chu Luiyue naturally didn't know about these undercurrents. What she cared about the most now was her own health. Zhenbao Pavilion was indeed reliable, and the second batch of herbs was delivered on time. Chu Luiyue wasn't in a hurry to deal with these things. Instead, she chose to go out that day. This time, she didn't go out directly from the main door. Instead, she disguised herself as a young man, wearing a black robe and a bamboo hat, and flipped out from near the small door. The imperial city was bustling. Even on the streets, there was no lack of people in all sorts of strange outfits. Thus, Chu Luyue didn't attract much attention. After leaving the Chu family, she headed west, heading straight for the ghost street in the western part of the city. Although it was called Ghost Street, it was actually a place where all kinds of people gathered to buy and sell things. There were crooks mixed in with the honest folk. There were all kinds of things for sale, and the prices were different. It was unknown how much money one could spend on what they could buy. Because of this, there were some people who liked to come here. Occasionally, if they were lucky, they could find some treasures. Chu Luyue came here today with this mentality. Ghost Street was very lively. There were all kinds of stalls on both sides of the street. Chu Luyue walked very leisurely. She seemed to be looking around carelessly, but her eyes were quickly sweeping over those things. Time passed bit by bit. After walking through half of Ghost Street, Chu Luyue didn't find anything that caught her eye. She couldn't help but feel a little disappointed. Just as she was considering whether to go back or not, she suddenly caught a glimpse of something on a shabby stall. Her heart skipped a beat, and she walked over without batting an eyelid. It was a stone about the size of a fist. It was grayish-white in color, and there was green moss growing on it. It looked like a stone that was randomly picked up from somewhere. However, if one looked carefully, they would see two faint red streaks on the stone. That proved that there was an extremely precious red jade hidden in this stone. Just as Chu Luyue was about to ask for the price, someone was one step ahead of her and picked up the stone. It was a man who looked to be about 20 years old. He had a fat head and big ears. He wore a brocade robe, and his whole body exuded the aura of a nouveau riche. Hey, I didn't expect my luck to be so good today. I can even find such a red stone. Old man, name a price. The owner of the stall was an old man. His hair and beard were all white. It was the middle of summer, but he was wearing a shabby cotton-padded coat. He was holding a palm leaf fan and gently fanning himself as he lazily reclined there. Hearing this voice, he opened one eye and then stretched out a finger. 100 taels? The old man shook his head. 10,000 taels. The young man suddenly exploded, and his fat body trembled. You're crazy. Giving you 100 taels for a piece of red stone is already giving you face. You even dare to extort me. Do you know who I am? Let me tell you, I am the cousin of the future crown princess. Hearing this, Chu Luyue, who had been watching coldly from the side, finally raised her eyebrows slightly. Chapter 16. Why don't you ask around about the Lu family's fourth young master? Chu Luyue suddenly understood. So, he was Chu Xianmin's cousin. Things haven't even started, and he's already related to her. Birds of a feather flock together, the old man snorted. Who cares who you are? 10,000 taels, not a penny less. If you can't afford it, someone else will. Lu Jitao was so angry that he laughed. He weighed the red stone in his hand and said arrogantly, Oh? I'd like to see who will buy this. As he spoke, he looked around warningly. The people who were interested in the red stone stopped in their tracks. Not everyone could afford to offend the Lu family's fourth young master. A red stone of this size would only cost 2,000 taels at most. No one would spend 10,000 taels. Moreover, he purposely revealed his identity. Whoever bought it would be going against him. Previously, people had heard that the crown prince liked Chu Xianmin. In the past 2 days, there were even rumors that the crown prince's personal guard, Song Yuan, had personally sent the invitation to the crown prince's birthday banquet to Chu Xianmin. It seemed like the future crown princess would definitely belong to Chu Xianmin. Offending the Lu family was equivalent to offending the crown prince. The surroundings were silent. Lu Jitao said proudly, Old man, I know this. Old man, I advise you to know your place. Other than me, no one else will buy this thing, 10,000 taels. I'll take it. A cold and clear voice suddenly sounded. At the same time, a fair hand suddenly reached out from the side and took the red stone away. Lu Jitao did not expect that someone would dare to snatch what he wanted. He was stunned for a while before he reacted. He took a closer look and saw that the other party was wearing a black robe and a bamboo hat. It seemed to be a young woman. Lu Jitao was furious. Who are you? Did he eat a bear's heart and leopard's guts? How dare you snatch something that this young master has his eyes on? The old man was also shocked. He finally opened his other eye and carefully looked at Chu Luiyue. Really? The redstone was indeed of high quality, but it wasn't worth 10,000 taels. He was short of money recently and didn't want to sell it to Lu Jitao, so he casually offered 10,000 taels. He didn't expect that someone would actually buy it. Chu Luiyue took out a banknote worth 10,000 taels and handed it to the old man. The old man was a little hesitant at first, but when he saw the banknote, his eyes lit up and he immediately took it. He was really poor recently. The highest bidder wins. Don't you understand this principle? Besides, this crimson rock is worth at least 1,000 taels of silver. You want to buy it for 100 taels of silver? How can there be such a bargain in this world? As Chu Luiyue spoke, she chuckled. Or could it be that the Lu clan's fortune was obtained through such means? Lu Jitao was so angry that his face turned red. He was scolding the Lu family as well. Without a second thought, he unsheathed the long sword at his waist and thrust it at Chu Luiyue. This young master will do whatever he wants. Who are you to lecture him? You're courting death. The old man who had just received the banknote opened his eyes slightly and clenched his fist lightly. Just as he was about to move, he stopped in surprise and looked at Chu Luiyue. She moved her feet lightly and turned her body. Somehow, she avoided Lu Jitao's sword. Lu Jitao's humiliation turned into anger when he missed his attack. He attacked Chu Luiyue again. This time, Chu Luiyue didn't retreat. Instead, she took a step forward and strangely bypassed his sword. She lifted her leg and kicked Lu Jitao's elbow. His arm went numb and his long sword fell. The next moment, he felt a chill on his neck. Chu Luiyue had already picked up the sword and placed it on his shoulder. If he moved, his head might be separated from his body in the next moment. When the old man saw this, his gaze turned from surprise to curiosity. He carefully sized up Chu Luiyue. This girl clearly didn't have any force fluctuations on her body. Logically speaking, she shouldn't be a match for Lu Jitao. And those few moves just now were simple and neat. Every move was fatal. If she wanted to, Lu Jitao's life and death would be in her hands. How interesting, Lu Jitao broke out in a cold sweat and stuttered when he spoke. You. What are you trying to do? You dare. Chu Luiyue increased her strength and Lu Jitao's neck immediately started bleeding. Noisy. Lu Jitao was so frightened that his face changed. He swallowed the rest of his words back into his stomach. He could tell that the other party was really daring and dared to do anything. Although his cultivation talent wasn't very good, the Lu family had spent a lot of money on him over the years. In any case, he had broken through to a third-stage warrior. Warriors of this level didn't have abundant force and could only master some simple martial arts techniques. But whether it was their physical strength or fighting skills, it was not something an ordinary person could compare to. The other party was obviously not a warrior, but she defeated him easily. Get lost. Chu Luiyue shouted. Only then did Lu Jitao stand up trembling and retreat until he was more than 10 steps away. Finally, he forced himself to shout, You. Just you wait. After saying that, he immediately turned and ran away without waiting for Chu Luiyue to speak. Chu Luiyue didn't take him seriously at all. She threw the sword down and turned to leave. Buying that red stone today was already a pleasant surprise. There was no point in staying here any longer. Moreover, Lu Jitao must have gone back to get reinforcements. She didn't want to expose her identity so quickly. The people who were surrounding Chu Luiyue saw that she was about to leave and subconsciously made a path for her. Although they couldn't see the person's figure or appearance, there was an inexplicable pressure on her that made people submit subconsciously. Hey! Wait! Seeing this, the old man immediately reacted. He hurriedly packed up his stall and was about to chase after Chu Luiyue. However, when he looked up, he realized that Chu Luiyue was no longer in sight. He was stunned for a moment and couldn't help but shake his head and scold with a smile, "What a vigilant girl." However, it was too naive to think that she could get rid of him like this. Chu Luiyue quickly sensed that someone was following her, so she quickly changed her route and walked through several streets. Not only did she not go to the Chu family, but she also went further and further away. Finally, she entered a remote and narrow dead end. After entering, the surroundings were quiet. She then turned around. "You've been following me all this way. Why don't you just say what you want to say?" After a moment, a hunched old figure appeared at the entrance of the alley. Chapter 17. He rubbed his hands in embarrassment. Hee, little girl, don't be angry. This old man didn't follow you on purpose. I just feel that the 10,000 taels is too much for my conscience. Although I'm short of money, I can't go against my conscience and bully a little girl like you, right? Chu Luiyue raised her eyebrows. If you're here for this, there's really no need. In my eyes, that red stone is indeed worth 10,000 taels. Not only was it worth it, it was super worth it. But the old man didn't believe her at all. He waved the fan in his hand. Hey! Little girl, don't be so polite. This old man has seen at least 90,000 if not 100,000 red stones. It's really not worth 10,000 taels. How about this, I'll give you something else as compensation. How about it? Chu Luiyue shook her head. Not interested. The old man's face fell. This little girl is too difficult to deal with. Why are you here? It's better to be straightforward. The old man looked at Chu Luiyue's indifferent expression. Her bright black eyes seemed to have seen through everything. He couldn't help but feel even more embarrassed. Actually, I just want to ask you a question. Who is your master? Although there was no fluctuation of force on her body and those few movements were very simple, he could tell at a glance that it definitely originated from one or more profound martial arts techniques. There must be a top-notch expert behind her. Otherwise, she would definitely not be able to suppress a stage 3 warrior like Lu Jitao so easily. These years, his life had been very boring. If he could exchange pointers with her, that would be great. Chu Luiyue narrowed her eyes. If I tell you, what's in it for me? The old man scratched his head in distress. He didn't have much money on him, and the other party didn't seem to be short of money either. After thinking for a long time, he finally patted his head and took out a jade pendant. How about this in exchange? It's still worth some money. Chu Luiyue lowered her head to take a look. Her eyes flashed slightly. It was actually a jade pendant carved with a mystic talisman. And it seemed that the grade of the mystic talisman wasn't low. The value of this thing was definitely not low. He actually gave it away so casually. Really? Of course. Seeing that Chu Luiyue seemed to be somewhat moved, the old man hurriedly took a few steps forward and stuffed the jade pendant into her hand. Anyway, this old man doesn't really need it. If you like it, you can take it. Chu Luiyue pondered for a moment, then simply accepted the item. Since he dared to give it to her, she naturally dared to accept it. Alright, then I'll tell you the truth, I don't have a master, said Chu Luiyue straightforwardly. The old man's excited and expectant expression instantly froze. What? No master? How was this possible? Don't tell me you learned all your martial arts on your own? Chu Luiyue coughed. She really couldn't explain this. I really don't have a master. Of course, the old man didn't believe him. He grabbed Chu Luiyue's wrist. Lass, if you don't tell the truth. Halfway through his words, he suddenly paused and looked at Chu Luiyue with shock in his eyes. You, Chu Luiyue frowned slightly and tried to break free. You're that lass from the Chu family? Chu Luiyue was stunned. He didn't see her face, but he actually recognized her. But she didn't have any impression of such a person. Seeing that she didn't speak, the old man was even more incredulous. You're really Chu Luiyue? Isn't your yuan meridian? So he recognized her by taking her pulse. Chu Luiyue heaved a sigh of relief and simply took off her bamboo hat. I'm indeed Chu Luiyue. You are? Seeing the beautiful face in front of him, the old man was stunned for a moment. So you're already so old. That's not right, your yuan meridian. Halfway through his words, he suddenly paused. For a moment, he really didn't know what to say. When Chu Luiyue was young, he did take her pulse and repeatedly confirmed that her yuan meridian was naturally incomplete and would never be able to cultivate in this lifetime. But just now, when he inadvertently felt her pulse, he discovered that there seemed to be a subtle change in her yuan meridian. Chu Luiyue looked at the old man's fluctuating expression and narrowed her eyes. She had only just begun to repair her yuan meridian. Normal people wouldn't be able to detect it. But this old man immediately recognized it. It was clear that he wasn't an ordinary person. It was very likely that he was a celestial physician. At the very least, he was an extremely powerful expert. Lass, tell this old man the truth. Who exactly is helping you? The old man's previously idle appearance was replaced by a much more serious expression. He let go of Chu Luiyue's hand and carefully stared into her eyes. Chu Luiyue sincerely shook her head. There really isn't anyone. If you don't believe me, you can personally ask around. Although I'm the first miss of the Chu family in name, I've been living worse than a servant all these years. I'm already lucky to be able to keep my life. What else can I do? The old man was skeptical. He hadn't paid attention to worldly affairs for many years and didn't understand many things in the capital. But Chu Luiyue was born a good-for-nothing. It wasn't difficult to guess what kind of life she had been living all these years. If someone was helping her from behind. She and Chu Ning didn't have any backing. Who could they find? Lass, what you say makes sense. But your yuan meridian is really hard to explain. The old man racked his brains but still couldn't figure out the reason for the sudden change in Chu Luiyue's yuan meridian. He couldn't help but knock his head with a fan. Chu Luiyue glanced at the sky. If you don't have any other matters, this junior will take her leave. Although she couldn't confirm this old man's identity, Chu Luiyue was certain that his background wasn't simple. She naturally wouldn't offend such a person. The old man casually waved his hand. His brows were still tightly knitted as he pondered over the problem. What exactly is? Chu Luiyue didn't stay any longer and quickly left. In the narrow alley, only the old man was left in deep thought. When Chu Luiyue returned to the Chu residence, everything was normal. The new herbs had been sent over. As usual, she brewed Chu Ning's medicine first and sent it over when Chu Ning returned. Chu Ning didn't say anything and drank all the medicine. His initial doubts had long been dispelled with the obvious improvement in his health. Now, in his eyes, his daughter was an out-and-out genius. Feeling a warm energy surging through his limbs, Chu Ning sighed softly. When Daddy recovers, I'll bring you to become a disciple. Your talent can't be buried. Chu Luiyue asked casually. Daddy, how many celestial physicians are there in country Yaochen now? Chu Ning pondered for a moment. The requirements to become a celestial physician are very stringent. Even if some people have a little talent, they can't become a true celestial physician. Now, there are only 7 celestial physicians in the entire country Yaochen. Chu Luiyue asked some indirect questions, but unfortunately, Chu Ning didn't know much about them, so he couldn't match up with the strange old man in the end. Chu Luiyue also knew that this matter couldn't be rushed, so he didn't ask any more questions. After Chu Ning left, he continued to brew his own herbs. That night, Shui didn't come. 3 days passed in the blink of an eye. When Chu Luiyue started brewing medicine for Chu Ning again, an uninvited guest came. It was that old man. Obviously, he didn't come in from the main entrance. He was still wearing the same tattered cotton-padded clothes, and there were a few leaves on his head. There were dark circles under his eyes, and he looked like he hadn't slept for a few days. Chu Luiyue was surprised to see him like this. "Why are you here?" The old man had a sad look in his eyes. "I thought about it for 3 days and 3 nights, but I still couldn't figure it out." "I didn't expect." Chu Luiyue was shocked. Did this mean that he hadn't slept for a few days because of her? He stretched out his trembling hand and pointed at the pot of fragrant herbs. He complained bitterly as if he had been deceived. Chapter 18. After listening to the old man's tearful complaints, Chu Luiyue realized that after she left that day, he had been wondering how she had started to heal her Yuan meridian. However, he couldn't figure it out even after 3 days of thinking. In the end, he had no choice but to make a trip to the Chu estate to take a look for himself. He almost fainted from anger when he saw what was inside. The entire courtyard was filled with the rich smell of medicinal herbs. He could tell that it wasn't simple with a single sniff. It was impossible for an ordinary person to perfectly blend so many medicinal herbs together. Even if it was him, it would be difficult for him to achieve this step. This girl actually said that no one helped her. Was she seeing a ghost? Chu Luiyue helplessly face-bombed when she saw the old man's "you big liar" expression. Most people wouldn't know what she was doing with these herbs, but this old man was different. He would definitely be able to tell something. Chu Luiyue couldn't be bothered to hide it and shrugged. "If you don't believe me, then so be it." With that, she continued to open the jade box and process the herbs. The old man was stunned. Seeing that Chu Luiyue had no intention of explaining, he immediately farted in a fit of pique. He sat on a rock nearby. "Girl, if you don't give this old man an explanation, I won't leave." Chu Luiyue nodded perfunctorily. "Oh. All right. There's water in the house. If you're thirsty, you can drink it yourself. Look. Look at this attitude." The old man was so angry that he waved the fan in his hand, causing his beard to flutter. This time, he really went against Chu Luiyue. Seeing that Chu Luiyue was really ignoring him, the old man snorted and casually looked around the courtyard. The Chu clan was one of the 4 great clans in the capital. Although they were ranked at the bottom, they still had some foundation. However, this courtyard was remote and shabby. It was no different from a poor family's. No matter who saw it, no one would believe that the once glorious Chu Ning and his only daughter were living here. These two were the direct descendants of the Chu clan. To think that they would end up in such a state, the old man sighed in his heart, and his anger gradually dissipated. Then, he looked at the plum blossom piles in the courtyard. They looked like they had just been set up. Was this used by Chu Luiyue for training? Wasn't it too simple and crude? This father and daughter pair were living too miserably. A unique bitter and sour smell suddenly drifted over. The old man sniffled and watched as Chu Luiyue took out a black withered vine the length of a small arm from the jade box and placed it into the boiling pot. "Hey, why did you add in the withered wall vine? This thing would melt when it came into contact with boiling water. At that time, its effectiveness will be greatly reduced." The old man quickly rushed to Chu Luiyue's side and spoke in an exasperated tone. "Aya, you silly girl. The withered wall vine was extremely valuable. Just like that, you." His words came to an abrupt halt. The withered wall vine, which should have melted quickly, was now lying in the pot. Steam rose from the boiling water and hot air rushed over, but the withered wall vine was still intact. Gradually, an ink-like liquid flowed out from the withered wall vine and dyed the air. The bitter and sour smell became fragrant and sweet. This was the smell of the withered wall vine when its effectiveness was completely extracted. The old man widened his eyes and looked at the scene in disbelief. How is this possible? The withered wall vine had an extremely strong healing effect. In addition, it grew on cliffs, and only grew an inch every 10 years, so it was very precious. However, such a rare herb was also very troublesome to process. Because it was extremely thin and brittle, once it was damaged, its efficacy would quickly dissipate. It could only be slowly steamed in water. If the water temperature was too high or too low, it would affect the efficacy of the herb. Especially boiling water, once it came into contact with it, it would quickly turn into slag. But now, the withered wall vine not only did not melt in the boiling water, but it was also stimulated to its strongest effect. How did you do it? The old man looked at Chu Luiyue in confusion. Chu Luiyue pointed. Take a closer look. The old man rubbed his eyes and leaned closer. Finally, he saw that the withered wall vine seemed to be covered with a layer of silver-white ice crystals. This is silver ice grass. This was an extremely common herb. Because it was silver-white and had a cold attribute, it was usually used to relieve pain. Grind the silver ice grass into powder and add it to the boiling water 15 minutes in advance. When the withered wall vine is added to the boiling water, it will quickly condense on the withered wall vine. In this way, the withered wall vine will not melt. Chu Luiyue explained. Everything had its weakness. Although the silver ice grass was common, it was extremely useful in this situation. The old man was stunned for a while before he suddenly slapped his thigh. That's right. Why didn't I think of it? Chu Luiyue smiled faintly. This was actually not a secret. Celestial physicians' understanding and application of the medicinal properties of herbs were different. Where did you learn this method? The old man finally reacted and looked at Chu Luiyue with sparkling eyes. Chu Luiyue scooped out the withered wall vine. The medicinal properties had already taken effect. It was best to remove the remaining residue as soon as possible. I figured it out myself. The old man naturally did not believe it. However, after asking for a long time, Chu Luiyue did not explain anything. He could not help but feel annoyed. However, his eyes did not leave the pot of medicinal herbs that was boiling in the water. Chu Luiyue did not hide it and openly allowed the old man to look at it. This medicine was brewed for Chu Ning. The prescription was very common and there was nothing wrong with showing it to him. This was because the technique and control of the medicine was more important. Some people did not have the talent. Even if they memorized the prescription and tried diligently, they would still not be able to become a celestial physician. The courtyard quietened down. The old man watched Chu Luiyue brew the medicine from the side and his expression gradually changed. Chu Luiyue's series of actions flowed smoothly. The timing and dosage of each herb could be said to be perfect. The medicinal fragrance became stronger and stronger, indicating that the medicinal properties were fusing together. Without tens of thousands of practice, it was absolutely impossible to achieve this. Even he would not be able to do it better than Chu Luiyue. Clack. The jade box was closed and the last herb was put in. From start to finish, not counting the herbs that Chu Luiyue had already put in before he came, she had put in at least 35 different herbs. Moreover, this was clearly not the limit of Chu Luiyue's standard. She was definitely at the level of a celestial physician. No matter who she learned her skills from, he was certain of one thing: Chu Luiyue was extremely talented on the path of a celestial physician. What was wrong with the Chu family? Not only did they not cherish such a rare celestial physician genius, they even dared to bully and humiliate her. Looking at this dilapidated courtyard, it was simply ironic. He rubbed his hands and looked at Chu Luiyue as if he was looking at a peerless treasure. Lass you, this old man will not ask you about those things. I only have one thing that I need your help with. I want to come here and watch you refine medicine in the future. Do you think that's okay? Chu Luiyue shook her head. She had too many things to do. It would be inconvenient to have another person around. Then, I'll come here once every 3 days. Chu Luiyue still shook her head. 5 days? Half a month. If you don't agree, then 1 month. Okay. Half a month. Just half a month. The old man was afraid that she would go back on her words. He nodded his head repeatedly and his face was already full of smiles. Chu Luiyue suddenly tilted her head and asked thoughtfully. Chapter 19. Ah. The old man was stumped by the question and scratched his head in distress. This was indeed a problem. He had snuck in today, but he couldn't possibly do this every time in the future, right? Although the Chu family's defenses were of no use to him, since he had decided to learn something from Chu Luiyue, he naturally couldn't be so casual. Besides, there were many rules and regulations in the celestial physician profession. One had to know that many celestial physicians placed great importance on their own methods and processes of refining medicine. Unless they were teaching their personal disciples, they rarely allowed outsiders to observe them. Chu Luiyue had already promised to visit him once every half a month, which was already very generous. As for this identity, how about I become your disciple? The old man said excitedly, but he immediately frowned and looked hesitant. But this old man had a master before. Although he has already passed away, it's a little difficult for me to acknowledge someone else as my master. Chu Luiyue looked at him speechlessly. This suggestion was also very difficult for her, all right? She also didn't want to accept such an old disciple, all right? How about this, how about you be my master? Chu Luiyue suggested. The old man was shocked and hurriedly waved his fan. That won't do. This old man wants to learn from you, how can I become your master? He could tell that Chu Luiyue's standards were not inferior to others. He wasn't qualified to be her master. Chu Luiyue's eyes curved into crescents. Why are you being so polite? This junior is inexperienced and doesn't know many things. Of course, I need a good master to teach me a thing or two. Could it be that you don't want to accept me as your disciple? What are you saying? How could there be anyone in this world who doesn't want to accept you as their disciple? But, as the old man spoke, he suddenly realized something, and his eyes widened in shock. Wait. You're saying that you still don't have a master? Chu Luiyue blinked sincerely. That's right. Didn't I tell you from the beginning? The old man looked at her suspiciously. He didn't dare to believe it in his heart. In the end, he could only guess that there must be a top master behind Chu Luiyue, but he couldn't show himself for various reasons, so he said that. You want me to be your master? Chu Luiyue nodded. Chu Ning might have believed her earlier words, but if it were anyone else, they would definitely be filled with doubts. She needed a master as a reason for her sudden change. In the future, if anyone asked, she just had to say that she had been secretly taught by a master and had been biding her time. The old man was silent for a long time. He was not stupid. He knew exactly what Chu Luiyue was planning. Being able to have such thoughts and methods was enough to prove that she was absolutely not as useless as the outside world said. On the contrary, she had top-notch talent and outstanding intelligence. A 14-year-old girl like her. God knows how many secrets she is hiding. Once she agrees, she will definitely be involved in a lot of trouble. Chu Luiyue did not rush him. She looked calm. The old man's expression changed. His eyes moved back and forth between Chu Luiyue's face and the medicine soup. He had already made up his mind to not get involved in these messy matters, but he really wanted to see Chu Luiyue refine medicine. All right. I promise you. The old man gritted his teeth and finally made up his mind. From now on, I will secretly watch you refine medicine. On the surface, I will be your master. Chu Luiyue was not surprised by this answer. Hearing this, her eyebrows relaxed. Then she crossed her hands and bent her knees slightly. Disciple Chu Luiyue greets master. She actually performed a formal apprenticeship ceremony. The old man was stunned. Looking at Chu Luiyue's still somewhat young face, he couldn't suppress the joy in his heart. This was his first disciple. In the past, he always felt that taking in disciples was troublesome. He didn't expect that by chance, he would take in such a genius disciple. Good. Good. He suddenly felt much closer to Chu Luiyue in his heart. He hurriedly let Chu Luiyue stand up. We, master and disciple, don't care about those formalities. If you have any problems in the future, just ask me. Chu Luiyue smiled with curved eyebrows. Thank you, master. Hearing the crisp master, the old man's heart was filled with tenderness. My surname is Yi. If you want to find me in the future, go directly to the autumn wind garden in the west of the city. Chu Luiyue quickly searched her mind, but did not find anyone surnamed Yi, let alone the autumn wind garden. But this was normal. She had been trapped in the Chu family for many years and did not know much about the outside world. Now was not the time to ask these questions. She simply did not dwell on it. When it was time to find out in the future, she would naturally know. After that, Master Yi and Chu Luiyue talked for a long time about refining medicine. It was not until sunset that they reluctantly left. Of course, Chu Ning knew nothing about all this. Chu Luiyue also pretended that nothing had happened and quietly nursed his body. More than 20 days passed quickly. Early in the morning, Zhenbao Pavilion sent the last batch of herbs over. After Chu Luiyue counted the herbs, he began to methodically refine the medicine. Unlike before, Chu Ning was also at home this time. From time to time, he would look at Chu Luiyue's room, feeling proud and nervous. After enduring for a few hours, Chu Luiyue finally stopped and scooped out the medicine soup. Father, this is the last time. After drinking it, you can try to cultivate again. Chu Luiyue brought over the medicinal soup that she had brewed. Chu Ning quickly went forward to take it, looking somewhat excited. During this period of time, his body had obviously improved. Not only did his crippled leg become as strong as before, even his perception of force seemed to be much stronger than before. He even faintly felt that he seemed to be even better than when he was at his peak. After being defeated for so many years, it was impossible to say that he did not want to make a comeback. He did not expect that the one who gave him this hope was actually his own daughter. Chu Ning drank it without hesitation. The blazing energy flowed down and then gathered in his dantian. He crossed his legs and crossed his arms in front of him. He closed his eyes and began to guide this energy. The surrounding force of heaven and earth seemed to be guided by something and began to gather towards Chu Ning. This was the sign of a breakthrough. Chu Luiyue curled his lips in satisfaction. Chu Ning's talent was indeed not bad. It was an unexpected surprise that he could take this opportunity to attempt a breakthrough. She quietly left and returned to her room. After this period of recuperation, the Yuan meridian in her body had almost recovered. She only needed one last step to completely recover. She began the last batch of medicine refinement. When the medicine soup was finished, the sky was completely dark. She took off her clothes and entered the bathtub. The rich medicinal fragrance lingered. White mist rose, almost obscuring her figure. She held her breath and concentrated, sinking her qi into her dantian. Strands of energy entered Chu Luiyue's limbs and bones. The Yuan meridian that was originally damaged and withered had now become lustrous and supple. Under the nourishment of the abundant energy, the Yuan meridian continued to expand and grow. At the same time, the small lake in Chu Luiyue's dantian started to ripple again. A faint red water droplet floated up from the middle of the lake. Then, it transformed into countless tiny particles that could not be seen and merged into Chu Luiyue's Yuan meridian. Buzz. Chapter 20. Chu Luiyue's body trembled. At that moment, she felt a terrifying pressure from ancient times that made her soul tremble. She didn't have time to be shocked. Instead, she felt a burning sensation in her body. The water droplet dispersed into millions of particles and landed on her Yuan meridian. It was like sparks falling and instantly igniting a huge fire. Her entire body felt like it was wrapped in a blazing flame. Chu Luiyue's heart trembled violently. She subconsciously curled up her body, clenched her fists, and gritted her teeth. Her mouth and nose were filled with the thick smell of blood. At that moment, it was as if she had returned to that nightmarish day. The pain was even more painful than that time. Chu Liuyue's body turned red. Her face was flushed with blood, and her entire body was like a piece of burning coal. She kept sweating all over, but before it could drip down, it was evaporated by her blazing body. At that moment, she almost subconsciously felt a sense of despair. Betrayal. Burning. Death. But in the next moment, she fiercely bit the tip of her tongue. The sharp pain woke her up. She desperately told herself that she wasn't in the ancestral hall of the Tianling dynasty. This wasn't the night she died. If she wanted revenge, she had to get through it. At this moment, every second was incomparably torturous. At the same time, Chu Liuyue's damaged Yuan meridian was finally connected. After an unknown period of time, the intense pain finally disappeared. Chu Liuyue slowly opened her eyes and saw that the originally clear medicinal soup in the bathtub had become much murkier. She immediately checked her Yuan meridian. She couldn't help but gasp. Daijing Yuan meridian? The damaged Yuan meridian had been completely repaired. Its entire body was lustrous and clear with a faint red color. She never expected that this body's Yuan meridian would reach the level of a Daijing Yuan meridian after it was repaired. Even in the entire history of the Tianling dynasty, there were only 2 people with Tianjing Yuan meridian. Although the Daijing Yuan meridian was 1 level lower, it was still considered a rare existence. This body was born with a damaged Yuan meridian. She thought that after she recovered, it would be good enough if she could reach the mystic meridian Yuan meridian. This was a huge surprise. In this way, her future cultivation would be twice the result with half the effort. Chu Liuyue quickly changed the hot water for a fresh bath. The Yuan meridian reconstruction seemed to have forced out some of the impurities in her body, making her feel much lighter. After tidying everything up, Chu Liuyue sat cross-legged on the bed and tried to absorb the heaven and earth origin force around him. As expected, he successfully condensed the origin force in his dantian and transformed it into his own power. Chu Liuyue felt the strands of energy flowing through his body, and the familiar feeling made him feel much more at ease. From now on, she can once again embark on the path of cultivation. However, she still had a question in her heart. What exactly was the lake formed by the transparent pages in his dantian? It seemed that the water droplet had caused a slight change in her Yuan meridian. Also, at that moment, she felt a vast and terrifying pressure. What exactly was it? Tock tock tock. There was a sudden knock on the door. Are you awake? It was Chu Ning's voice. Chu Liuyue took a look and realized that a night had passed. She took a deep breath and walked over to open the door. Chu Ning was standing at the door, and the dispirited and depressed look on his face had changed to one of high spirits. Today, it was obvious that he was a completely different person from before. Chu Liuyue tilted her head and smiled. Father has broken through? Chu Ning was stunned and immediately ruffled her hair. I really can't hide anything from you, 10 years ago, when he was just 1 step away from becoming a rank 5 warrior, he suffered a serious injury and did not make any progress. Because of his physical disability, he could not even use half of the power of a rank 4 warrior. He did not expect that 10 years later, he could actually recover and even break through to become a rank 5 warrior. One must know that in the entire Chu family, only the patriarch and 2 elders had reached this level of strength. I said before, father will definitely be better than before. Chu Ning's talent was not bad, and after careful recuperation, it was normal for him to break through to rank 5. She had a sweet smile on her face, but there was no surprise in her eyes. Chu Ning pondered for a moment and guessed that she might have thought of this long ago. Chu Ning carefully sized her up and suddenly realized something, and his eyes widened in shock. Your Yuan meridian. He actually felt the fluctuations of origin power from her body. Chu Liuyue blinked. Father, what day is it today? Chu Ning's expression changed. August 8th. The day after tomorrow is Yu's coming-of-age ceremony. It was also the day of her engagement with the Crown Prince. Until now, the Crown Prince had not said anything, and it was obvious that he did not prepare for the engagement. Chu Ning thought that Chu Luyue felt wronged and hurriedly said, Don't worry, father will go to the palace to meet His Majesty today and request to cancel your engagement with the Crown Prince. The Crown Prince is not a good match for you, so this is considered a relief. He was now a rank 5 warrior and could speak to His Majesty. However, Chu Luyue chuckled. Cancel my engagement with the Crown Prince and let Chu Xianmin reap what she sowed? Isn't that letting the two of them off too easily? She had yet to settle the score with them for all the grievances that she had suffered all these years. Chu Ning was a little confused. What do you plan to do, Yu? Chu Luyue said softly, Yu has her own plans. I have my own plans. Outside the imperial city, there was a continuous mountain range. Under the sunlight, the lush forest was mottled with light and shadow. A grand birthday banquet was being held at the foot of a mountain somewhere. Precious white jade tables were placed on both sides, and all kinds of delicacies and nectar were placed on them. More than half of the imperial city's aristocratic families with extraordinary status were here. They toasted each other, and it was very lively. However, from time to time, their gazes would shift to the seat of honor. There was a purple gold jade chair there, and a young man in a purple-red brocade robe was smiling as he listened to the conversations of the people at the banquet. It was the Crown Prince, Rong Jin. Chu Xianmin sat on his right side, looking quiet and beautiful. To be placed in this position meant that the Crown Prince had the intention of making her the Crown Princess. The Crown Prince is really in a good mood. He chose to hold his birthday banquet in such a beautiful place. It's indeed extraordinary. Brother you don't know this. The scenery is nice, but more importantly, this mountain is the Crown Prince's hunting ground. The Crown Prince values this hunting ground very much, and he rarely opens it to the public. Today, we can finally broaden our horizons. Really? Once this was said, the crowd couldn't help but look at the Crown Prince. Rong Jin smiled and nodded. That's right. Whoever can tame the fiend can take it away. Hearing this, the crowd gasped in unison. The Crown Prince is so generous. Someone couldn't help but tease. The Crown Prince is so generous. I'm afraid it's not for us but to make the beauty smile, right? If I remember correctly, third Chu Missy doesn't have a fiend yet. Chu Xianmin's cheeks flushed red as she looked at Rong Jin shyly. Rong Jin smiled and drank a cup of wine. If you're not as skilled as others, how can you blame Minmin for snatching your fiend? The crowd laughed in support. Some of the aristocratic family's daughters were naturally angry and jealous, but they knew that they didn't stand a chance after seeing the situation, so they could only bear with it secretly. Rong Jin waved his hand. Chapter 21. At Rong Jin's command, Song Yuan, who was standing behind him, clapped his hands and signaled his subordinates to inform the hunting ground. Everyone revealed a faint look of excitement. Rumor had it that the Crown Prince had been taking care of the hunting ground for many years. The types and levels of the fiends inside were definitely not something an ordinary hunting ground could compare to. If they were lucky, they might even be able to contract a rare fiend. Chu Xianmin's hands were crossed in front of her abdomen. Her posture was very dignified and elegant, but her eyes flashed with uncontrollable excitement. She did not expect the Crown Prince to go this far for her. He had actually prepared such a big gift for her on his birthday. Even though she had not gone in to take a look, she knew how much the Crown Prince valued the hunting ground. The fiends inside would definitely not disappoint. Even though the Chu family had their own hunting ground, they did not have any good fiends. She did not like them at all. She was originally very talented. If she could contract a good fiend, it would undoubtedly be icing on the cake. Minmin, it all depends on your ability whether you can get the biggest prize this time. Rong Jin moved closer and smiled. Chu Xianmin nodded shyly. I know Brother Jin's good intentions. I'll do my best. Rong Jin laughed. He liked Chu Xianmin's intelligence. She knew what to say and what to do at the right time. Seeing that he was in a good mood, Chu Xianmin's heart skipped a beat. Then, the smile on her face faded. She looked troubled and said softly, "It's a pity. Sister can't come this time." Rong Jin's expression froze and became cold. The surrounding people naturally heard this and immediately looked over. Interesting. The sister that Chu Xianmin mentioned was none other than the Chu family's eldest missy, Chu Luiyue. Everyone knew that she was engaged to the crown prince. However, the crown prince did not like her because she was born useless. The crown prince had not invited her to his birthday banquet for many years. If Chu Xianmin did not bring it up, who would remember her? Rong Jin's tone was cold. She's slow-witted. She'll only spoil everyone's mood if she comes. Chu Xianmin seemed to have just realized that her words were inappropriate and hurriedly apologized. "Brother Jean, don't be angry. I was just thinking that sister doesn't have much to do at home. That's why I thought it would be a good thing if she could come out and have some fun, nothing to do." What could a good-for-nothing do? Everyone secretly exchanged glances with a hint of mockery. The crown prince was too unlucky. Out of so many noble ladies, he just had to pick a good-for-nothing as his fiancée. How shameful. Minmin, you're worrying too much. Brother Jean and sister's engagement ceremony is just around the corner. Sister is too busy to care about these things. Chu Xianmin lowered her voice even more, and she lowered her head slightly. Her voice was filled with hidden grievance and bitterness. Minmin is not qualified to say these things, Rong Jin sneered in his heart. Previously, when Song Yuan returned, he had already explained to him in detail what had happened that day. Chu Luiyue actually dared to dream of an engagement. What a dream! Tonight, there would be a banquet specially prepared for him in the palace. At that time, he would naturally explain this matter to his imperial father and make a clean break with that trash. Thinking of this, he said indifferently, "What's the point of mentioning those irrelevant people? Nobody can say for sure what will happen in the future. You just have to do your job well." Chu Xianmin was elated. The crown prince meant that he would not have anything to do with Chu Luiyue. Previously, when Chu Luiyue calmly mentioned the engagement, she thought that the crown prince really had some thoughts about Chu Luiyue. Now, it seemed like Chu Luiyue was just putting on an act. Sensing the envious gazes of many people around her, Chu Xianmin nodded obediently. She lowered her eyes slightly to hide the smugness in her eyes. Naturally, the people around her were smart and immediately spoke up when they saw the situation. "Haha. His Highness is so generous today. We can't miss this opportunity." "That's right. I won't go easy on you guys later. Come on. I haven't sparred in a while. I'll find you guys later." The crowd laughed and teased, and it was very lively. Rong Jin smiled and said, "All right. All right, looking at the time, they should have released the little ones by now. It's a good time to enter the mountain now." As he spoke, he took the lead and walked forward. Chu Xianmin followed behind him. The crowd also fought to catch up, afraid of being left behind. After passing through a forest, the crowd's eyes suddenly opened up. They saw a tall and steep mountain standing tall. The lush forest made the entire mountain appear green, and the wind blew past, causing the pine trees to sway. At the foot of the mountain, there was an extremely tall black iron fence. There were people guarding it at every set distance. These guards were also very strong and seemed to be very capable. The crowd could not help but be secretly surprised. Just the maintenance of this hunting ground was probably not a small sum of money. In the entire imperial capital, there were probably not many people who could do such a thing. Since the crown prince valued this place so much, there must be some high-grade fiends inside. However, Song Yuan, who was following behind Rong Jin, felt his heart skip a beat when he saw this scene. There were clearly not so many people when he was taking care of this hunting ground previously. The page boy that was sent previously was currently standing in front of the hunting ground and arguing loudly with the guard in charge of guarding it. Who exactly are you people? How dare you secretly occupy the Crown Prince's hunting ground? You must have eaten a bear's heart and leopard's guts. How many lives do you have to offend the Crown Prince? However, the guard's expression did not change. You said that this is the Crown Prince's hunting ground. Do you have evidence? The page boy was so angry that he laughed. Everyone in the Imperial City knows that this is the Crown Prince's territory. Why are you pretending to be confused? I'm telling you that the Crown Prince will be here soon. If you still don't, what's going on? Why are you arguing? Song Yuan saw that the situation was amiss and quickly walked over to scold him. The page boy immediately turned around and saw that Song Yuan was already behind him. The Crown Prince and his people were behind him too. He immediately panicked. If he did not complete the task that the Crown Prince gave him well, he might even lose his life. Others might not know, but the people who served in the East Palace knew this person's temper the best. He hurriedly knelt on the ground. Sir, we don't know where these people came from, but they have occupied the hunting ground and are not allowing anyone to enter. Song Yuan was shocked. Someone actually dares to mess with the Crown Prince? Are they tired of living? He looked at the two people and angrily shouted, "Are you crazy? Are you crazy? No, who are you? They are clearly not our people." He suddenly thought of something and quickly looked at the other guards in the distance. As expected, they were all unfamiliar faces. Song Yuan sucked in a breath of cold air. Someone actually forcefully occupied our hunting ground right under our noses? But why was there no news at all? Whose people are you? How dare you occupy the Crown Prince's hunting ground? This angry roar was very loud, and Rong Jin and the rest behind heard it clearly. Instantly, there was dead silence. The smile on Rong Jin's face gradually froze. What's going on? When the two guards saw him, they cupped their fists and bowed, but their words were not polite at all. "Greetings, Your Highness. Our master said that we thank you for taking care of this hunting ground all these years. We won't let you down in the future." Rong Jin almost suspected that he had heard wrongly. "This is my hunting ground. When did the master change? Why don't I know about it?" One of the guards looked up and asked. Chapter 22. Rong Jin froze on the spot. After a while, he finally realized what the guard meant. His usually expressionless face revealed a rare look of disbelief. Is he asking me for the title deed? Just as he was about to scold the guard, a blurry memory suddenly flashed across his mind. No. I really don't have the hunting grounds title deed. Even though father gave it to me, it was actually a betrothal gift to Chu Luyue. The title deed is with Chu Luyue. Your Highness, the hunting ground belongs to whoever's name is written on the title deed, right? If I'm not wrong, this hunting ground never belonged to you, right? Even though the guard looked ordinary, he was neither servile nor overbearing in front of the Crown Prince. He even sounded a little stubborn. Rong Jin instantly felt his chest turn upside down. It was as if a ball of cotton was stuck in his chest, and he felt extremely aggrieved and embarrassed. This was because he could not refute the other party's words. The crowd behind Rong Jin was also stunned when they saw the situation. What's going on? How did the Crown Prince's hunting ground become someone else's for no reason? They even dared to ask the Crown Prince for the title deed. Where did these people come from? Someone else suddenly recalled an old incident from a few years ago. If he remembered correctly, the title deed should be with Chu Luyue. However, she was just a good-for-nothing. How could she find so many people to go against the Crown Prince? Some people silently looked at Chu Xianmin. Chu Xianmin was also stunned for a while. It was only when all sorts of gazes landed on her, intentionally or unintentionally, that she suddenly remembered that Chu Luyue was involved in this. Rong Jin clenched his fists in his sleeves and tried his best to suppress the anger in his heart. He coldly asked, "Did Chu Luyue send you here?" The guard shook his head. We have nothing to do with Big Chu Missy. Rome Jean sneered in his heart. Nothing to do with her? He's already calling her Big Chu Missy. How many people in the imperial city would call that good for nothing that way? He would never believe that Chu Luiyue was not behind this. Do you mean that this hunting ground belongs to you now? The guard respectfully said, it belongs to our master. How dare you? Song Yuan took a step forward with a fierce expression. This is a hunting ground bestowed by His Majesty. His Highness the Crown Prince has carefully maintained it for many years. How did it become your master's property in the blink of an eye? I think you guys are just looking for a beating. As he spoke, he circulated the force in his body, turned his palm into a fist, and fiercely smashed it towards one of them. Dragon Tiger Fist. Song Yuan was only 27 or 28 years old, but he had already broken through to become a stage 4 warrior. This punch was wrapped in a vigorous force, and the force was tyrannical. Vaguely, the wind from the punch was like a tiger's roar. At this moment, one of the guards stepped forward and threw out a punch with a calm expression. He had actually chosen to fight head-on. Bang! A dull thud rang out in the quiet forest. The powerful force caused the leaves that were piled up on the ground to fly up with a whoosh. Song Yuan originally didn't care about the other party at all, but the moment he collided with the other party's fist, he felt a tyrannical force rushing towards him. He even faintly felt that the other party's strength seemed to be even stronger than his. Sure enough, in the next moment, his body retreated uncontrollably. Thud, thud, thud. He was actually forced to take 3 steps back. He finally stabilized his body with much difficulty. Just as he wanted to curse, he felt a surge in his chest, and his mouth was suddenly filled with the thick smell of blood. Song Yuan forcefully suppressed his anger and swallowed the blood with much difficulty. At that moment, the air seemed to have frozen. The two of them exchanged blows. Song Yuan was forced to retreat, but the guard was as steady as a rock. Looking at Song Yuan's pale face, anyone could tell that he wasn't the other party's match. He was a stage 4 warrior. How could he be defeated so easily? Rome Jin's face was as gloomy as water. First, the hunting ground was snatched away in front of so many people. Then, his personal guard was taught a lesson. He had lost all his face. That guard took a step back and politely cupped his hands toward Rome Jin. Your Highness, Master has ordered us to guard the hunting ground properly, so we didn't dare to slack off. Please forgive us, Your Highness. It sounded like he was asking for forgiveness, but in actual fact, he was tearing off the crown prince's face and ruthlessly trampling on it. In the entire country Yao Chen, other than the current emperor, the crown prince had the highest status. Even if he didn't have the title deed, how many people would dare to do so? Rome Jin solemnly asked. Who exactly is your master? The guard lowered his head slightly. We're from Zhenbao Pavilion. The Chu family. Chu Luiyue glanced at the sky and finally stopped his training. He then took off the sandbags on his hands and feet and softly muttered, It's almost time. It's about time, indeed. After a while, hurried footsteps could be heard. It was First Elder's page boy. His face was filled with undisguised schadenfreude. Chu Luiyue, First Elder wants to see you. When he came, he saw how terrible First Elder's expression was. This time, Chu Luiyue was definitely in big trouble. Chu Luiyue lightly glanced at him. Who were you calling just now? The page boy inexplicably shuddered and couldn't help but think of Chu Liansheng. He heard that he was directly chopped up by Chu Luiyue because he spoke rudely to Chu Luiyue. He actually almost forgot that the current Chu Luiyue was no longer the same as before. The arrogance he had when he came inexplicably disappeared, and the page boy's voice also became a little guilty. Why you? Missy, First Elder wants to see you. Only then did Chu Luiyue walk over leisurely. If you don't know how to call people, you don't have to use your tongue. Do you understand? Chu Luiyue spoke slowly, but it made the page boy suddenly panic and hurriedly nod. Chu Luiyue then followed him to the front hall unhurriedly. The place she lived in was very remote, and it would take a long time to walk there. The page boy gradually became anxious, but he didn't dare to rush her. He could only hold it in. After a long time, Chu Luiyue asked seemingly unintentionally. "Who's here?" "It's Tai," the page boy answered instinctively and only realized that it was inappropriate when he opened his mouth. However, the invisible pressure from Chu Luiyue's body made him have no choice but to speak obediently. "It's the Crown Prince's men." Chu Luiyue didn't say anything, but he sneered in his heart. Even at this point, Rong Jin still refused to show himself. It was obvious that he hadn't suffered enough losses. The Chu family's front hall. First elder and a middle-aged man sat opposite each other. Chu Xianmin sat beside first elder. The man had a square face and ordinary looks. There was a half-inch-long scar on his cheek, which made him look ferocious. He sat there boldly and didn't say anything, but it made first elder, who was sitting opposite him, feel uneasy. This was the Crown Prince's confidant. His arrival was already worrying, and what he said just now, this Chu Luiyue was too bold. "Missy is here." The few people in the front hall looked up together and saw Chu Luiyue walk in. First elder finally couldn't hold it in. He slammed the table and angrily reprimanded, "You're tuning into the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure."